When I returned home after 20 years abroad to the $15 million estate I bought for my daughter, I expected a hug and a warm meal. Instead, I found her scrubbing the driveway in a maid's uniform, looking so thin and broken that my heart stopped in my chest. She looked at me with dead eyes and said, "We do not give handouts here, sir. You need to leave before the master sees you." She did not even know I was her father. Then her husband came out, threw a penny at my face, and threatened to unleash the dogs on me. He thought he was chasing away a beggar. He did not know he had just declared war on the man who owns the very ground he stands on. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to return from the dead to save the ones you love. My name is Silas King. I am 74 years old. To the people passing me on the street in my worn-out coat and dusty boots, I look like just another old man who let life pass him by. They see the wrinkles carved by desert suns and the limp from a construction accident in Dubai, and they think failure. They do not see the bank accounts in Singapore or the skyscrapers in Abu Dhabi that bear my signature on the blueprints. They do not see the billionaire who spent 2 decades building an empire of steel and glass just so his daughter would never have to lift a finger. I stood at the bottom of the long, winding driveway that led up to the estate at 4000 West Paces Ferry Road. The iron gates were tall and imposing, topped with gold spikes that glinted in the Georgia sun. I remembered buying them. I remembered the day the contractor installed them 20 years ago. I had told him to make them strong to keep the bad things out. I never imagined that the worst thing would be locked inside. I pressed the intercom button. My hand trembled slightly. It was not from age. It was from the overwhelming anticipation of seeing my little girl, my Naomi. I had left when she was 20, a bright-eyed college student full of fire and dreams. I had sent money, millions of dollars. I had bought this house through a trust so she would always have a sanctuary. I had stayed away because the work consumed me, and because I thought I was providing. I thought money was enough. There was no answer at the gate. I pressed it again. Still nothing. I pushed on the pedestrian gate. It was unlocked. That was the first sign that something was wrong. Security was supposed to be tight. I walked up the driveway, my boots crunching on the gravel. The landscaping was immaculate, the hedges trimmed into sharp geometric shapes, the fountain in the center of the circular drive bubbling cheerfully. It looked like paradise. But as I got closer, I saw her. There was a woman on her hands and knees near the front steps. She was scrubbing the stone with a brush, dipping it into a bucket of gray soapy water. She wore a gray uniform that was 2 sizes too big for her, hanging off her frame like a shroud. Her hair was tucked under a scarf, and her head was bowed low. I walked closer. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Excuse me, miss," I said, my voice raspy from the dust of the road. The woman froze. She did not look up immediately. She flinched as if she expected a blow. Then slowly she raised her head. The air left my lungs. It was Naomi. But it was not my Naomi. The woman before me was gaunt. Her cheekbones jutted out sharply under skin that looked like parchment. Her eyes, once bright and full of mischief, were dull and sunken, surrounded by dark circles of exhaustion. She looked 10 years older than her age. She looked broken. She looked at me, and there was no flicker of recognition, no spark, nothing. She just saw an old black man in dirty clothes standing in her driveway. "I am sorry, sir," she whispered, her voice thin and terrified. "We do not accept solicitors. Please, you have to go." "Naomi," I said, my voice cracking. "It is me." She blinked. She looked confused. Her eyes darted to the front door, then back to me. "My name is Naomi." "Yes," she said. "But I do not know you." "Sir, please. If Mr. Preston sees you here, he will be very angry. He does not like strangers. He does not like anyone on the property." Mr. Preston, her husband, the man she had married right after I left, the lawyer. "Naomi, look at me," I pleaded. "I am your father. I am Silas." She shook her head violently. "No. No, my father is dead. Mr. Preston told me. He died years ago abroad. Please, old man, do not make trouble for me. I have to finish these steps before he wakes up. If they are not clean, he will dock my pay, dock her pay. This was her house. I bought it for her. Why was she talking about pay? Why was she scrubbing the floor? Why did she think I was dead?" A cold fury began to rise in my gut, replacing the shock. Someone had stolen my daughter's life. Someone had stolen her memories. I took a step toward her, reaching out a hand. "Naomi, child, Listen to me. I am not dead. I have been away. I sent you letters. I sent you money." She scrambled backward, knocking over the bucket. Soapy water splashed across the driveway, soaking her knees. "Oh no," she cried, looking at the spill with pure terror. "Oh no, he is going to kill me." The front door banged open. A man stepped out onto the porch. He was tall white with slicked-back blonde hair and a face that was handsome in a cruel, sharp way. He wore a silk robe open at the chest, holding a cup of coffee. He looked like the lord of the manor, surveying his serfs. This was Preston. "What is going on out here?" he shouted, his voice booming across the lawn. "Naomi, why are you making so much noise? I am trying to enjoy my morning." Naomi scrambled to her feet, her head bowed low. "I am sorry, sir," she stammered. "I am so sorry. This man, he just walked in. I was trying to tell him to leave. I spilled the water. I will clean it up immediately, sir. Please forgive me." Preston looked at the water, then he looked at me. His lip curled in disgust. He didn't see a threat. He didn't see a billionaire. He saw a trespasser. He saw dirt. "Who the hell are you?" he asked, walking down the steps. "How did you get past the gate?" I stood my ground. "I am Silas," I said. "I am looking for my daughter." Preston laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Your daughter," he scoffed. "We do not have any daughters here, old man. We just have the help, and she is busy." He gestured at Naomi, who was frantically trying to scoop the water back into the bucket with her bare hands. "Look at what you made her do," Preston said. "She is clumsy enough as it is. Now I have to watch her do this all over again." He turned his cold blue eyes on me. "This is private property. That means you are trespassing. Get off my land before I call the sheriff." I looked at him. I looked at the house I paid for. I looked at the car in the driveway that I probably paid for too. "I want to speak to Naomi," I said, my voice steady. "I told you to leave." Preston snapped. He reached into the pocket of his robe. For a second I thought he was reaching for a weapon. Instead he pulled out a coin. A quarter. He threw it at me. It hit me right in the cheek, a sharp sting of metal against skin. It fell to the gravel at my feet. "There," he said, "there is 25 cents. Go buy yourself some dignity. Go buy a clue. Just get out of my sight, you filthy beggar." I stood there, the coin at my feet, the insult hanging in the air. I could have crushed him. I could have snapped his neck with the moves I learned from the mercenaries in the desert. I could have pulled out my phone and bought the bank that held his credit cards. But I did not. Not yet. I needed to know more. I needed to understand how deep the rot went. I needed to know why my daughter was a slave in her own home. Naomi looked up at me. There were tears in her eyes. "Please," she mouthed silently. "Please go." She was trying to protect me. Even now, even in her broken state, she was trying to protect the stranger she thought was a beggar. Preston whistled loudly. A sharp, piercing sound. From around the side of the house, 2 Dobermans appeared. They were sleek black muscle bounding toward us with teeth bared. "Lucifer Brutus," he called. "Watch." The dogs stopped flanking him, growling low in their throats. They looked ready to tear me apart on command. "I am going to count to 3, Preston said, smiling a smile that was all teeth. "If you are not moving by 3, the boys get a new chew toy." 1. I looked at Naomi. I looked at the house. I looked at the dogs. I slowly bent down. My knees cracked, but I kept my eyes on Preston. I picked up the quarter. It was warm from his pocket. I rubbed it between my thumb and forefinger. 2. Preston said, his hand resting on the collar of the biggest dog. I put the coin in my pocket. "I am leaving," I said. I turned my back on them. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around and fight, but a general does not fight a skirmish when he can win the war. I walked down the driveway. I heard Preston laughing behind me. "Run along, old man," he shouted, "and tell your homeless friends that the King Estate is closed for charity." King Estate. He used my name. He lived in my house. He enslaved my daughter. And he thought he was the king. I walked out the gate. I turned the corner where my rental car was parked out of sight. It was a nondescript sedan, not the Rolls-Royce I could afford. I sat in the driver's seat. My hands were shaking now, not from fear, from rage, a cold, calculating rage that settled in the pit of my stomach like a stone. I pulled the quarter out of my pocket. I looked at George Washington's profile. He thought I was a beggar. He thought I was weak. He thought I was alone. He had no idea. I pulled out my phone. It was a secure satellite phone, the kind I used to close deals in war zones. I dialed a number. It rang once. Thorn speaking a voice answered. Crisp. Professional. Deadly. It is Silas, I said. Mr. King, Thorn said. You have arrived. I have, I said. Did you see her? Thorn asked. I saw her, I said. My voice broke and I had to take a deep breath to steady it. She didn't know me, Thorn. She thinks I am dead. He has her scrubbing the floors. He threw a coin at me. There was a silence on the other end of the line. Thorn knew what that meant. He knew what I was capable of. What are your orders, Sir Thorn asked. I looked at the quarter in my hand. I looked at the security camera mounted on the stone pillar of the gate. The red light was blinking. It was recording. Preston was watching me on his monitors inside. He was probably laughing. I looked into the rear-view mirror at my own reflection. The gray beard, the tired eyes. I am not Silas King the billionaire today, I said. Today I am just an old man looking for work, Sir Thorn asked. I am going back, I said. You are going back to the house. Yes, I said. But not through the front door. He thinks I am a beggar. Fine, I will be a beggar. I will be a servant. I clenched my fist around the coin. Start the paperwork, Thorn. Buy the bank, buy the mortgage, buy the debt. I want to own every single thing that man touches. Consider it done. And Thorn, I added, yes, sir. Find out everything about him. Every sin, every lie, every secret. I want to know what he eats for breakfast and who he sleeps with at night. I want to know his nightmares. I looked at the gate one last time. He bought a ticket to hell when he threw this coin, I whispered. And I am the conductor. I started the engine. I am coming for you, Naomi, I said to the empty car. Daddy is home, and he is bringing the fire. I stood in front of the cracked mirror in the bathroom of a cheap motel room on the outskirts of Atlanta holding a razor in my hand. My reflection stared back at me, a man who had built skyscrapers in Dubai and negotiated deals with princes. But that man could not walk back into the house at 4000 West Paces Ferry Road. That man was too dangerous. That man would have snapped Preston's neck the moment he opened the door. To save my daughter, I had to become someone else. I had to become invisible. I raised the razor and shaved off the beard I had grown over the last decade. The skin underneath was pale and lined. I took a bottle of cheap hair dye I had bought at a drugstore, not to cover the gray, but to enhance it. I bleached my remaining hair until it was a stark, fragile white. I stopped standing tall. I let my shoulders slump. I let the old injury in my leg drag a little heavier. I put on a pair of canvas work pants stained with grass and oil and a shirt that was frayed at the collar. When I looked in the mirror again, Silas King the billionaire was gone. In his place was just an old, broken man named Arthur, a man who needed a job, a man who looked like he wouldn't survive the winter. It was the perfect camouflage. I took a taxi to the edge of the neighborhood and walked the rest of the way. I walked up to the service gate of the estate. I pressed the buzzer. "Who is it?" Preston's voice crackled over the intercom, impatient and arrogant. "Sir," I said, making my voice sound thin and reedy. "I am here about the gardening job. I saw the weeds, sir. I thought you might need a hand." There was a pause. The gate clicked open. "Come to the back," Preston ordered, "and don't touch anything." I walked around the side of the house. The gardens I had paid millions to design were a mess. The roses were overgrown, the hedges were wild, and the fountain was filled with green algae. It broke my heart to see it, but it gave me an opening. Preston was cheap. I knew his type. He spent money on cars and clothes, but he wouldn't pay a professional landscape crew. He would want a bargain. Preston was waiting for me on the back patio. He was wearing a white tennis outfit, holding a racket he probably didn't know how to use. He looked me up and down with a sneer. "You are the gardener?" he asked. "You look like you are about to keel over, old man." "I am strong enough, sir," I said, keeping my head down. "I have nowhere else to go. I will work cheap." "How cheap?" Preston asked, his eyes lighting up. $5 an hour," I said. "And a place to sleep." "The tool shed is fine." Preston laughed. $5. "That is illegal, you know." "I don't care about the law, sir," I said. "I just want to work." He grinned. He thought he had found a fool. He thought he was exploiting a desperate, senile old man. He didn't know he was inviting the wolf into the sheepfold. "You are hired," he said. "But if I catch you stealing so much as a leaf, I will set the dogs on you. And you stay out of the main house. You sleep in the shed. No guests. No noise." "Yes, sir," I said. "Start with the hedges," Preston commanded, pointing to the overgrown boxwoods. "They look like trash, just like you." He walked back inside. I picked up a pair of shears from the pile of rusted tools by the shed. I started cutting. I worked for hours. My hands blistered. My back ached, but I didn't stop. I needed to establish my presence. I needed to become part of the scenery so I could watch, so I could listen. From my vantage point in the garden, I had a clear view into the living room through the floor to ceiling windows. It was the room where I used to read bedtime stories to Naomi. Now it was a stage for her humiliation. Around noon, a car pulled up. A red convertible. A woman got out. She wasn't Naomi. She was young blonde and dressed in clothes that cost more than the landscaping budget for the entire year. She walked into the house like she owned it. I moved closer to the window, hiding behind a large azalea bush. I saw Preston greet her. He kissed her, right there in the living room of the house I bought for his wife. He poured her a glass of champagne. Then he rang a small silver bell. A moment later, Naomi entered the room. She was wearing that gray maid's uniform. Her hair was tied back in a rag. She looked at the floor, avoiding their eyes. "You rang, sir," she whispered. Preston pointed to the woman's boots. They were high-heeled leather boots, muddy from the walk up the driveway. "Miss Jessica's boots are dirty," Preston said. "Clean them." Naomi hesitated. She looked at the woman. She looked at her husband. "Preston," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, not while she is wearing them." "Do not talk back to me," Preston shouted. He stood up and loomed over her. "You live here rent-free. You eat my food. You do what I say. Now get on your knees and clean the boots." I gripped the garden shears so hard the metal bit into my palm. I wanted to smash the glass. I wanted to storm in there and tear him apart limb by limb. But I couldn't, not yet. If I revealed myself now, I would save her for a day, but I wouldn't save her soul. I needed to know why she submitted. I needed to know what hold he had on her. I watched as my daughter, the girl who had graduated top of her class, the girl who had a spirit like wildfire, slowly lowered herself to her knees. She took a rag from her pocket. She began to wipe the mud from the mistress's boots. The blonde woman laughed. She took a sip of champagne and kicked her foot slightly, making Naomi flinch. "You missed a spot," the woman said. Preston chuckled. "She is a little slow, Jessica. You have to have patience with the help." I watched Naomi scrub. I saw a tear fall from her eye and land on the leather boot. She wiped it away quickly, terrified he would see it. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. This was not just abuse, this was ownership. He had broken her spirit completely. When they were finished dismissing her with a wave of the hand, Naomi scurried out of the room like a frightened mouse. I went back to work. I pruned the roses until my hands bled. I channeled my rage into the work. Every branch I cut was Preston's neck. Every weed I pulled was his influence. Night fell. The lights in the big house went out. I went to the tool shed. It was a small wooden structure filled with spiders and the smell of gasoline. There was a cot in the corner with a thin mattress. This was my accommodation. I waited until I saw the lights go out in the master bedroom. I waited until the house was silent. Then I moved. I crept out of the shed. I knew this house. I knew every lock, every window. I had designed the security system myself 20 years ago, and Preston had never bothered to update the codes. I punched in the override sequence on the back door keypad. It beeped softly and unlocked. I slipped inside. The house smelled of stale smoke and cheap perfume. I walked through the kitchen where dirty dishes were piled high in the sink. I walked past the living room where the ghost of my daughter's dignity still lingered. I needed to find where she slept. I knew she wasn't in the master bedroom. I walked down the hallway past the guest rooms. They were all empty, cold. I found her at the end of the hall in what used to be the pantry. The door was closed. I opened it a crack. It was a tiny windowless room lined with shelves. A cot was squeezed into the space between the canned goods and the mop bucket. Naomi was curled up on the cot wrapped in a thin blanket. She was asleep, but her sleep was restless. She whimpered in the dark. I stepped inside. I tried to be quiet, but the floorboard creaked. Naomi sat up instantly, gasping, pressing her back against the wall. Please, she whispered in the dark. I finished the boots. I finished everything. Don't hit me, Naomi, I whispered. It is okay. It is just the gardener. She relaxed slightly, but she was still shaking. You shouldn't be in here, old man, she hissed. If he finds you, he will kill us both. Get out. I am leaving, I said. I wanted to make sure you were okay. I am fine, she said, her voice flat. Go away. I backed out of the room, but as I turned, my foot kicked something under the cot. A book. I bent down and picked it up. It was a small leather-bound journal. Give that back, Naomi whispered, reaching for it. I held on to it. Is this yours? I asked. It is private, she said. Please. It is all I have. I handed it back to her. Her fingers brushed mine. They were ice cold. I left the room. I closed the door. But I didn't leave the house. I went to the living room. I turned on the small flashlight I had brought. I had seen something sticking out of the journal when I held it, a loose page. It had fallen onto the floor when she grabbed the book back. I walked back to the pantry door. The page was lying on the floorboards. I picked it up. It was a diary entry dated 3 days ago. The handwriting was messy, frantic, stained with teardrops. I shone the light on the paper. Dear Daddy, it read. I don't know if you can hear me in heaven. Preston says you are dead. He showed me the letter from the embassy. He said you died alone in a hospital in Singapore and that you left nothing. He said you gambled it all away. I froze. Dead. Gambled it away. He says I have to pay your debts. The letter continued. He says the house is his now because he paid off the creditors you owed. He says I have to work to pay him back for saving the family name. I am trying, Daddy. I am working so hard, but it hurts. He hurts me, and now he brings her here. Why didn't you come back? Why did you leave me alone with him? I am so scared. I don't think I can do this much longer. I wish I was dead too. I lowered the paper. My hand was shaking uncontrollably. He had lied to her. He had told her I was dead. He had told her I was a failure. He had used my name to enslave her. He had convinced her that she was working to pay off my sins. That was why she submitted. That was why she scrubbed the floors. She was trying to redeem me. She was trying to save my honor. She loved me. She still loved me. And he had used that love as a chain to bind her. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. The rage that filled me now was not hot. It was absolute zero. It was the cold vacuum of space where no life can exist. Preston wasn't just a thief. He was a monster. He had stolen my daughter's life with a lie about my death. I walked out of the house. I walked back to the tool shed. I sat on the cot in the dark. I listened to the wind rustling the leaves of the overgrown garden. He said I was dead. Well, he was about to find out that ghosts are very real. And they are very angry. I took out my phone. I sent a text to Thorne. He told her I am dead. He forged a death certificate. Find it. The reply came back instantly. I am on it, sir. I lay down on the cot. I stared at the spider webs on the ceiling. I wasn't going to sleep. I was going to plan. Preston wanted a servant. He wanted a gardener. Tomorrow he was going to get one. I was going to fix his garden. I was going to prune the weeds, and he was the biggest weed of all. I closed my eyes. Hold on, Naomi, I whispered. Daddy isn't dead. Daddy is just getting started. The night was humid, heavy with the threat of a storm that mirrored the atmosphere inside the estate. Preston had decided to throw a party. Not just a small gathering, but a gala, a celebration of his own magnificence. The driveway was lined with luxury cars, Ferraris, Bentleys, Rolls-Royces gleaming under the floodlights. The house was lit up like a beacon of wealth in the dark Georgia night. Music spilled out onto the lawn, a jazz quartet playing softly near the pool. I was in the kitchen wearing a white server's jacket that was too tight across my shoulders. Preston had ordered me to help. We need extra hands, old man, he had said that morning, throwing the jacket at me. Don't embarrass me. Just pour the wine and keep your mouth shut. Naomi was there too. She was wearing her maid's uniform, but she had tried to fix her hair to look a little more presentable. Her eyes, however, were dead. She moved like a robot, placing hors d'oeuvres on silver trays, her hands trembling slightly. I watched her from the corner near the wine cooler. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to shake her and say, "Wake up, child. I am here. I am your father." But I couldn't. Not yet. Thorne had found the death certificate, the one Preston had forged. It listed my cause of death as heart failure in a Singapore hospital 10 years ago. It was a masterful forgery complete with official seals. But Thorne had also found something else, a loan agreement. According to the documents Preston had shown Naomi, I had died owing him $5 million. He claimed he had bailed me out of bad investments and that I had signed over the house as collateral before I fled the country. He told her that the only reason he let her stay was out of the kindness of his heart so she could work off my debt. It was a lie so big, so audacious that it took my breath away. He had turned my success into my shame. He had turned my daughter's love into guilt. Tonight, he was celebrating the anniversary of buying the house, or rather, the anniversary of the day he stole it. The guests were arriving, men in tuxedos, women in gowns that cost more than Naomi's life savings. They laughed and drank ignorant of the tragedy unfolding in the kitchen. Preston walked in. He was wearing a white dinner jacket looking like a movie star villain. He checked his reflection in the stainless steel refrigerator door. "Is the champagne ready?" he barked at Naomi. "Yes, sir," she whispered. "Good. And you," he said, pointing at me. "The red wine, the vintage Bordeaux. Make sure it breathes. And don't drink any of it. That bottle is worth more than you are." I nodded, keeping my head down. "Yes, sir." I opened the bottle. It was a Chateau Margaux 1996. A good year. I had bought a case of it myself 20 years ago. I poured a glass for him. But before I handed it over, I reached into my pocket. I had a small vial. It wasn't poison. I wasn't a murderer. It was a concentrated laxative, a potent industrial-strength formula used for horses. Thorne had acquired it for me. I put 3 drops into the glass, just enough to send a message, just enough to remind him that even kings have bowels. "Here you go, sir," I said, handing him the glass. He snatched it from me without a word. He swirled it, sniffed it, and took a sip. "Excellent," he said. "Now get out there and serve." I followed him out into the garden. The party was in full swing. Preston worked the room, shaking hands, kissing cheeks, telling stories about his business conquests. I bought this place for a song he bragged to a group of investors. It was a distressed asset. The previous owner, well, let's just say he had some issues. Gambling mostly. Sad story, really. But I saw the potential. I turned it around. He gestured to the house, to the grounds, to the fountain I had designed. "It takes a visionary to see value where others see ruin," he said. The guests nodded appreciatively. They toasted his vision. They toasted his success. I walked among them, refilling glasses invisible in my server's uniform. I listened to their chatter. They talked about stocks, about mergers, about their summer homes in the Hamptons. They were the elite, the masters of the universe, and they had no idea that the man pouring their wine could buy and sell them all before breakfast. Naomi was circulating with a tray of canapes. She looked exhausted. A woman in a red dress stopped her. "Oh, honey," the woman said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You missed a spot on my glass. Can you get me a fresh one?" Naomi flinched. "I am sorry, ma'am," she said. "I will get it right away." She hurried away, her head down. My heart burned. They treated her like furniture, like a prop in Preston's play. Preston was standing by the pool holding court. He raised his glass for another toast. To success, he shouted. To the future, and to knowing a good deal when you see one. He downed the rest of the wine. I watched him. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. His face changed. It went from smug satisfaction to sudden confusion. His eyes widened. He put a hand to his stomach. A sheen of sweat appeared on his forehead. "Are you okay, Preston?" a guest asked. I am fine," Preston said, his voice tight. "Just a little indigestion." He tried to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. He shifted his weight from foot to foot. The rumbling in his stomach was audible even over the jazz music. "Maybe you should sit down," someone suggested. "No," Preston snapped. "I am fine." But he wasn't fine. The color drained from his face, leaving him pale and clammy. He clutched his stomach with both hands, dropping his wine glass. It shattered on the patio stones, red wine splashing onto his white trousers, looking like blood. "Oh, God," he groaned. The guests backed away, looking alarmed. "Bathroom," he gasped. "I need a bathroom." He turned to run toward the house, but he didn't make it. His legs buckled. He fell to his knees, retching. A loud, wet sound erupted from him, followed by a smell that cleared the patio instantly. He had soiled himself, in his white dinner jacket, in front of his investors, in front of the elite of Atlanta. The silence was total. The music stopped. The guests stared in horror. Preston groaned, rolling onto his side in the fetal position. Naomi ran over to him. She dropped her tray and knelt beside him. "Preston," she cried. "Are you okay?" She tried to help him up, but he shoved her away. His hand struck her shoulder hard, knocking her back onto the stone. "Get off me!" he screamed, his voice a ragged tear. "This is your fault. You did this. You poisoned me." He pointed a shaking finger at her. His face was twisted with hate and humiliation. "You useless bitch," he yelled. "You tried to kill me." Naomi looked at him terrified. "No, Preston, I didn't, I swear." "You are fired," he shrieked. "You are dead. Get out of my sight." He tried to stand up, but slipped in the mess he had made. He scrambled toward her, his hand raised to strike her again. He was going to hit her, right there in front of everyone. I moved. I dropped the wine bottle I was holding. It shattered. I stepped over the glass. I crossed the patio in 3 strides. Preston's hand was in the air, ready to come down on my daughter's face. I caught his wrist. My grip was iron. The grip of a man who had built skyscrapers. The grip of a father. Preston froze. He looked up at me. He saw the old gardener, the beggar. But he saw something else in my eyes. Something ancient and dangerous. "Let go of me," he hissed. "Do you know who I am?" I tightened my grip until I felt the bones in his wrist grind together. He cried out in pain. "Don't touch her," I said. My voice was low, calm, and terrifying. "Don't you ever touch her again." The guests gasped. They stared at the old servant holding the master of the house hostage. Preston looked at me, his eyes wide with shock and pain. "Who do you think you are?" he whispered. I leaned down close to his ear. "I am the one who cleans up the mess," I said. I shoved him back. He fell into the pool with a splash. The water turned murky around him. I reached down and helped Naomi up. Her hands were shaking. She looked at me with wonder. "Thank you," she whispered. I didn't smile. I looked at the guests. "The party is over," I announced. I turned and walked away, leaving Preston thrashing in the water, leaving the guests in shock. I walked back to the tool shed. I sat on my cot. My heart was pounding. I had revealed myself. Just a little. But enough. Preston would come for me now. He would try to fire me. He would try to hurt me. But he was wounded. He was humiliated. And a humiliated man makes mistakes. I pulled out my phone. I sent a text to Thorne. Phase 1 complete. He is ready. I lay back on the cot. The war had started. And the first shot had been fired. It was a dirty shot, a low blow, but he deserved it. And tomorrow I was going to take his house. The next morning the air at the estate was thick with humidity and hostility. I was sweeping the patio stones near the pool, my back bent in the posture of a servant, but my eyes were sharp, scanning every movement inside the house. Preston had spent the night raging. I had heard him screaming at Naomi through the thin walls of the tool shed, blaming her for his humiliation in the pool, blaming her for the ruined party, blaming her for his own incompetence. At 8 o'clock he stormed out onto the terrace. He was wearing a fresh white suit, trying to reclaim the dignity he had lost when he fell into the chlorinated water. He saw me and his face twisted into a sneer. "You," he barked, pointing a manicured finger at me. "Pack your trash, old man. You are fired." I stopped sweeping. I leaned on the broom handle. I did not look at him with fear. I looked at him with the patience of a man watching a fly fly into a web. "Fired, sir," I asked, my voice trembling just enough to sell the act. "But I have nowhere to go." "That is not my problem," Preston spat. "You embarrassed me. You touched me. Nobody touches me. I want you off my property in 10 minutes or I am calling the police to drag you off." He turned to walk away, dismissing me like I was an insect. But I knew something he did not. I knew he was broke. I knew he was leveraging debt to pay debt, and I knew his pool heater had blown a gasket 3 days ago because I had seen the repair estimate sitting on the kitchen counter when I was looking for food. $50,000. That was what the pool company wanted to fix the custom Italian heating system. $50,000 that Preston did not have. "Sir," I called out, "before I go, I noticed the pool is cold." Preston stopped. He turned back slowly. "What is it to you?" he asked. "I used to work maintenance," I lied, "in a big hotel. I know these systems. It is the heat exchanger, right? The intake valve is corroded." Preston narrowed his eyes. "So what?" So I continued the pool. "Guys want 50 grand to replace the whole unit, but you do not need a new unit. You just need to bypass the valve and re-weld the seal. I paused, letting the greed do its work. I can fix it for $50 in parts, I said, and I will do it for free, if you let me stay. I watched the wheels turn in his head. He hated me. He wanted me gone, but he loved money more than he hated me. He did not have $50,000. If the pool stayed cold, he could not throw his parties. He could not impress his investors. His image would crack. He looked at the pool. He looked at me. He weighed his pride against his wallet. $50, he asked, skeptical. Just for the welding rods and a gasket, I said. I have the tools. He sneered. Fine. Fix it. But if you break it further, you will pay for it. And you stay out of my sight. You sleep in the shed. You eat in the shed. And you do not speak to me or my wife unless spoken to. Yes, sir, I said, lowering my head. Thank you, sir. He grunted and walked back inside. He thought he had won. He thought he had exploited a desperate old man to save himself a fortune. He did not know that he had just given me the time I needed to destroy him. I spent the afternoon fixing the pool. It was a simple job for a man who had built skyscrapers. As I welded the pipe sparks flying around me, I formulated the next step of the plan. Preston was living on borrowed time and borrowed money. Thorne, my lawyer, had dug into his finances. It was a house of cards built on fraud and forged signatures. The biggest card in the deck was the mortgage. Preston had taken out a massive loan against the house, $5 million, claiming he owned it free and clear. He had used a forged deed and a corrupt notary to get the money. The bank that held the note was a mid-sized regional lender called Southern Trust. They were aggressive, and they did not like bad debt. I finished the weld. I wiped my hands on a rag. The pool heater hummed to life. I walked back to the tool shed. I closed the door and locked it. I pulled out my satellite phone from its hiding place under the floorboards. I dialed Thorne. It is done, I said. I bought myself some time. Good, Thorne said. We are ready on this end. What is the move? Who holds the note on the house, I asked. Southern Trust, Thorne replied. A $5 million balloon mortgage. He is 3 months behind on interest payments, but he has been charming the loan officer to keep them at bay. Buy it, I said. Thorne paused. Buy the mortgage. No, I said. Buy the bank. Thorne laughed, a low, dark sound. The whole bank, sir. It is a regional lender, I said. Their market cap is low. They are overexposed on commercial real estate. Make them an offer they cannot refuse. A cash injection for a controlling interest. Do it through the shell company in Singapore. And once we own it, Thorne asked. Once we own it, I said, my voice turning cold. I want you to audit the loan portfolio, specifically the loan to one Preston Sterling. I want that note called Thorne. I want it called immediately, I understand, Thorne said. Default clause. Acceleration of debt. Exactly, I said. He thinks he owns this house. He thinks he is the king. I want him to wake up tomorrow and realize he is a squatter. Do it tonight, I said. I want the courier at the front door by breakfast. Consider it done, Mr. King. I hung up. I lay back on the cot. The smell of gasoline and fertilizer was strong, but I barely noticed it. I was thinking about Naomi. I had seen her earlier watching me from the kitchen window while I fixed the pool. Her eyes were sad and empty. She looked like a prisoner watching a bird fly past her cell. Hold on, baby girl, I whispered to the darkness. The walls are coming down. I slept fitfully. I dreamed of the day she was born. I dreamed of the promise I made to keep her safe. I had broken that promise by leaving, but I was going to keep it by returning. The next morning the sun rose bright and hot. It was a Tuesday, a day for business, a day for ruin. I was up at dawn pruning the hedges near the front gate. I wanted a front row seat. At 8 a.m. a car pulled up. It was not a mail truck. It was a black sedan with a courier service logo on the side. A man in a uniform got out carrying a thick red envelope. Legal correspondence. Urgent. He rang the buzzer. Delivery for Mr. Preston Sterling, he said into the intercom. Signature required. The gate clicked open. The car drove up. I watched as Preston opened the front door. He was wearing his silk robe holding a croissant. He looked annoyed. What is it now? He snapped at the courier. Sign here, sir, the courier said. Preston scribbled his name. He took the envelope. He looked at the return address. Southern Trust Bank. He shrugged. Probably another statement, or maybe an offer for a credit limit increase. He was arrogant enough to believe that. He ripped it open right there on the porch. He pulled out the letter. I trimmed a branch, my eyes locked on his face. He read the first line. His eyebrows furrowed. He read the second line. He stopped chewing his croissant. He read the third line. The color drained from his face so fast it looked like the blood had been sucked out of him by a vampire. He went gray, then white. He dropped the croissant. It rolled down the steps. He clutched the doorframe for support. His knees buckled slightly. What he whispered, his voice carried on the still morning air. This is impossible. He read it again, shaking his head violently. $5 million, immediately. The letter was standard but brutal. It informed him that Southern Trust had undergone a change in ownership and risk assessment protocols. His loan had been flagged for irregularities. The bank was exercising its right to accelerate the debt. The entire principal plus back interest and penalties was due within 24 hours. If payment was not received, foreclosure proceedings would begin immediately. And since there were allegations of fraud on the application, the matter would be referred to the federal authorities. Preston looked up. He looked around the estate. He looked at the fountain. He looked at the cars he couldn't afford. He looked at me. He didn't see Silas King. He saw the old gardener trimming a hedge. He looked right through me. He turned and ran back into the house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. I smiled. I snipped a dead leaf from the bush. Panic. That was the first stage. Next would come the scramble. The desperate phone calls. The lies. He would try to find money. He would try to find a way out. But there was no way out. I had bought the exit. I took out my phone. I sent a text to Naomi on the satellite phone I had given her. Stay in your room today. The storm is coming. I put the phone away. Inside the house, I could hear shouting. Preston was screaming at someone on the phone. He was screaming at Naomi. He was a trapped animal and he was starting to bite. I went back to the tool shed. I needed to prepare for the next phase. Preston would need money. A lot of money fast. And when a man like Preston needs money, he makes mistakes. He looks for saviors in the dark. I was going to send him a savior who would lead him right off the cliff. I picked up my shears. There was still work to do. The garden needed to be perfect for the funeral of Preston Sterling's life, and I was the gravedigger. The morning sun beat down on the manicured lawns of the estate, but inside the house the atmosphere was as cold as a tomb. Preston was unraveling. I watched him from my vantage point in the rose garden where I was pretending to deadhead the blooms that had survived his neglect. He was pacing the terrace, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice rising in a screeching crescendo of panic. The letter from the bank, the one calling in the $5 million loan, sat on the patio table like a loaded gun. He had 24 hours left. 24 hours before the facade he had built crumbled into dust. I pulled my straw hat lower over my eyes and moved closer, snipping at the bushes with a rhythmic metallic click. I needed to be close enough to plant the seed. I needed to offer him the rope he would use to hang himself. "I can't pay it today," Preston shouted into the phone, kicking a lounge chair. "I need an extension. Just give me a week. I have assets. I have liquidity coming in." He listened for a moment, then threw the phone onto the cushion. It bounced harmlessly, but his rage did not dissipate. He ran his hands through his slicked back hair, messing up the perfect coiffure. He looked like a man who was watching the water rise above his chin. He didn't see me. To him, I was just part of the scenery, a tool like the lawnmower or the rake. I was the old man, Arthur the gardener, who lived in his shed. I cleared my throat. It was a dry, dusty sound. "Excuse me, sir," I said, my voice trembling just enough to sound submissive. Preston spun around, his eyes wild. "What do you want, old man? Can't you see I am busy? I don't have time for your senile rambling." I kept my head down, clutching the shears to my chest. "I am sorry, sir," I said. "It is just... I heard you talking. About money, about selling." Preston sneered. "You were eavesdropping. I should fire you right now." "What do you know about money? You work for $5 an hour." "I know," I said. "But I hear things, sir. People talk to the help. They don't think we are listening." Preston looked at me, his interest piqued by his own desperation. "What did you hear?" I took a step closer, looking around as if sharing a state secret. "I was down at the market this morning," I lied smoothly. "Buying fertilizer. I met a driver, a chauffeur. He drives for a very important man. A man from Dubai." Preston froze. "Dubai," he whispered. The word tasted like gold to him. "Yes, sir," I continued. "Mr. Farouk. The driver said he is in Atlanta looking for property. Not just any property. He wants a trophy. A mansion with history. A mansion with gardens. He wants to buy it cash. Today." He leaves for London tomorrow. I watched the gears turn in Preston's head. I saw the greed override the panic. I saw the shark smell blood. Cash, Preston asked. Yes, sir, I said. The driver said money is no object. He just wants the best. And sir, I thought of you. I thought of this house. It is the best, isn't it? Preston looked at the house. He looked at the columns, the sprawling wings, the fountain I had fixed. For the first time in days, he didn't see a liability. He saw a winning lottery ticket. Do you have a number? Preston asked, stepping toward me. For this Mr. Farouk. I fumbled in my pocket, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper. I had written the number on it myself 10 minutes ago. It routed directly to a burner phone held by an actor I had hired, an old acquaintance named Julian, who owed me a favor and could play a billionaire better than most real billionaires. The driver gave me the card for his assistant, I said, handing it to him. He said if I knew of anything. Preston snatched the paper from my hand. He didn't say thank you. He didn't offer me a bonus. He just turned his back on me and dialed the number. I went back to the roses. I listened. Hello, Preston said, his voice transforming instantly into the smooth, oily tone of a salesman. Yes, this is Preston Sterling. I understand Mr. Farouk is in the market for a premium estate. Well, you are in luck. I happen to be the owner of the finest property in Buckhead. It wasn't on the market, but for the right buyer. I snipped a thorn. Got him. He spent the next hour negotiating with a ghost. He paced the garden making promises he couldn't keep, describing assets he didn't own. He was selling the sky. Finally, he hung up. He let out a whoop of joy that startled the birds from the trees. Yes, he shouted, pumping his fist. 10 million. He is willing to go to 10 million. He ran into the house. Naomi, he yelled. Naomi, get down here. I followed him at a distance, moving to the kitchen window. I watched as he dragged my daughter into the living room. She looked exhausted, her uniform stained, her eyes red from crying. We are saved, Preston announced, grabbing her shoulders. I found a buyer, a billionaire. He is coming to dinner tonight. Dinner, Naomi asked, her voice weak. Tonight. But we have no food, Preston. The accounts are frozen. I will handle the food, Preston said, manic energy vibrating off him. I have a stash of cash in the safe. I will send the gardener to the store. But you have a more important job. What? Naomi asked. You have to make this place look like a palace, he said. I want every surface polished. I want the silver to shine. I want the floors to look like mirrors. This guy buys perfection, Naomi. And we are going to give it to him. But the deed, Naomi whispered. The paperwork. You told me there were issues with Dad's debts. I will handle the paperwork. Preston snapped, his mood darkening instantly. You just handle the house. And listen to me, Naomi. This is crucial. He leaned in close to her, his hands tightening on her arms until she winced. Tonight, you are not my wife, he said. Naomi blinked. What? Mr. Farouk is a traditionalist. Preston lied, improvising his cruelty. He doesn't do business with women, and he expects a certain hierarchy. If he knows I am married to the maid, he will lose respect. He will think I am weak. So, what am I? She asked, tears welling in her eyes. Tonight, Preston said, you are the staff. You are the head housekeeper. You serve the food. You pour the wine. You do not speak unless spoken to. You do not look him in the eye. You are invisible. Do you understand? Naomi stared at him. The humiliation was total. He was stripping her of her last shred of identity. He was asking her to serve him in her own home to help him sell her birthright. Preston, she whispered. Please. Do it, Preston hissed, shaking her. Or we lose everything. We go to jail, Naomi. Is that what you want? Do you want to see me in handcuffs? No, she sobbed. No. Then be a good girl, he said, patting her cheek. Be a good servant. And when he signs that check, when we have the 10 million, I will buy you a whole new wardrobe. I will take you to Paris. I promise. He was lying. He was going to take the money and run. I knew it. She knew it deep down, but she was too broken to fight. Yes, sir, she whispered, looking at the floor. Preston smiled. That is my girl. Now get the old man in here. I need him to clean the pool deck. I walked into the kitchen before he could call me. Sir, I said. You, Preston barked. Here is $500. Go to the market. Buy steaks, the best ones. Buy lobster. Buy champagne. and be back in an hour. And then, he looked me up and down, his nose wrinkling. You are going to serve tonight. Me, sir? I asked. Yes, you, he said. I need a butler. Someone to open the door, someone to pull out the chair. You look the part, ancient, worn out. It adds character to the house. Old money has old servants. He laughed at his own joke. Put on a suit, he said. There is an old tuxedo in the attic that the previous owner left behind. It probably smells like mothballs, but it will have to do. The previous owner. That was me. He was telling me to wear my own clothes to serve him dinner in my own house so he could sell it to my employee. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Yes, sir, I said. I will do my best. Good, he said. Now go. And if you mess this up, old man, if you spill one drop of wine, I will feed you to the dogs myself. I took the money. I walked out to the truck I had borrowed from the farm. I drove to the market. I bought the food. I bought the wine. But I also made a call. Thorne, I said, the fish is on the hook. Excellent, Sir, Thorne said. Mr. Farouk is in character. He will arrive at 7. Make sure he pushes him, I said. Make sure he asks for the papers. Make sure he asks about the ownership. I want Preston to lie. I want him to commit fraud in front of a witness. He knows the script, Sir, Thorne said. And Thorne, I added. Yes, sir. Bring the paperwork, I said. The real paperwork. Tonight we close the deal. I drove back to the house. I spent the afternoon polishing silver alongside my daughter. We didn't speak. She was too afraid. I was too angry. But every time our hands brushed as we passed a tray, I squeezed her fingers. I wanted her to know she wasn't alone. At 6 o'clock, I went to the attic. I found my old tuxedo. It was a little loose now. I had lost weight in the desert, but it still fit. I put it on. I looked in the mirror. I didn't see a butler. I saw a man preparing for a funeral. Preston's funeral. I went downstairs. The house was gleaming. Naomi had worked herself to the bone. She was standing in the kitchen wearing a fresh uniform, her hands clasped in front of her, staring at the floor. Preston came in. He was wearing a velvet dinner jacket. He looked like a peacock. Showtime, he said, checking his reflection in a spoon. The doorbell rang. Get the door, Arthur Preston commanded, using the fake name I had given him. And remember, you are furniture. You don't exist. I walked to the front door. My heart was pounding a slow, heavy rhythm. I opened the door. Standing there was Julian, my friend, my actor. He was dressed in flowing white robes, a keffiyeh on his head, gold rings on every finger. He looked like a caricature of wealth, but to a desperate man like Preston, he looked like salvation. Behind him stood Thorne, dressed as a bodyguard, holding a metal briefcase. Welcome, sir, I said, bowing low. Julian looked at me. His eyes twinkled for a fraction of a second before he composed his face into a mask of imperious boredom. Tell your master I have arrived, he said. I stepped back. Mr. Sterling, I announced, my voice echoing in the foyer. Your guest is here. Preston came running, his arms spread wide, his smile so fake it looked painful. Mr. Farouk, he gushed. Welcome. Welcome to my humble home. Julian swept past him, not taking the offered hand. We shall see how humble it is, he said, looking around at the architecture I had designed. I closed the door. The trap was shut. The dinner was about to begin, and the main course was going to be justice, served cold. The crystal chandelier in the dining room was polished to a blinding shine, reflecting the desperate ambition of Preston Sterling. He had pulled out all the stops. The table was set with the finest china, the same china I had bought in Paris 20 years ago. The wine was vintage, though I knew Preston couldn't afford it. He was betting everything on this dinner, on this one deal with the mysterious Mr. Farouk. I stood in the corner, dressed in my ill-fitting tuxedo, a silent observer in my own home. I watched as Julian, playing the role of the eccentric billionaire to perfection, inspected a fork as if it were a rare artifact. Exquisite, Julian murmured. Truly exquisite. You have excellent taste, Mr. Sterling. Thank you, Preston beamed, pouring more wine. Only the best for my guests. Naomi entered the room carrying a silver tureen of soup. She moved like a shadow, her eyes fixed on the floor. She was terrified. I could see the tremor in her hands as she placed the soup on the sideboard. This is the housekeeper, Julian asked, waving a dismissive hand at my daughter. Yes, Preston said quickly. She's shy, but she makes excellent soup. Indeed, Julian said. He leaned back in his chair. Now, Mr. Sterling, before we indulge, I must attend to business. My lawyers have been reviewing the preliminary documents you sent over. Preston stiffened. Yes, is there a problem? A small discrepancy, Julian said, pulling a folded paper from his robe. Regarding the title, it seems the property was originally held in a trust, the King Family Trust. Oh, that. Preston waved his hand dismissively. Old paperwork. The trust was dissolved years ago. The previous owner, my late father-in-law, he had some legal troubles. We transferred everything to my name to protect the assets. I see, Julian said, his eyes narrowing. And your wife, the daughter of the previous owner, did she consent to this transfer? Preston's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Of course. It was her idea, actually. She wanted to distance herself from her father's legacy. Julian looked at Naomi, who was standing by the sideboard clutching a serving ladle. Is that true? Julian asked her directly. Naomi froze. She looked at Preston. His eyes bored into her, a silent threat screaming from his gaze. Lie, lie, or else. Yes, Naomi whispered, her voice barely audible. It was my idea. Speak up, girl, Julian commanded. I can't hear you. It was my idea, Naomi said louder, her voice trembling. I signed the house over to my husband, voluntarily. And you received compensation, Julian pressed. Fair market value. I didn't want compensation, Naomi stammered, reciting the script Preston had drilled into her. I just wanted to be free of it. My father, he was a bad man, a criminal. I didn't want his money. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. To hear my daughter say those words, even under duress, was a dagger to the heart. But I knew it wasn't her. It was fear speaking. Fascinating, Julian said. So you have no claim to this property, no lingering interest? None, Naomi said. A tear escaped her eye and rolled down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away. Excellent, Julian said, clapping his hands. Then the deal can proceed. $10 million. Cash. Preston let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for an hour. Wonderful. Shall we celebrate with the soup? Please, Julian said. Preston stood up. Arthur, he barked at me. Serve the soup, and be careful. I walked to the sideboard. I picked up the tureen. It was heavy, filled with steaming lobster bisque. I walked toward the table. I moved slowly, shuffling my feet. I wanted them to see an old man. I wanted them to underestimate me. I reached Preston's chair. He was leaning back, a smug smile on his face, already spending the $10 million in his head. Hurry up, old man, he muttered. I leaned in. I tilted the tureen, but I didn't pour it into his bowl. I stumbled. I let my knee buckle just a fraction. The tureen tipped. A wave of hot, creamy orange soup cascaded onto Preston's lap. He screamed. It was a high-pitched, undignified shriek. He jumped up, knocking his chair over. The soup soaked his white trousers, his velvet jacket, his expensive shirt. He looked like he had been dipped in lava. You idiot, he roared, grabbing a napkin and frantically wiping at his crotch. You clumsy, stupid old fool. Look what you did. This is silk. This is Italian silk. I am so sorry, sir, I stammered, backing away, playing the part. My hand, it slipped. Slipped, Preston yelled. I'll show you slipped. He raised his hand to strike me. He was going to hit me, right there in front of the billionaire. But he stopped when he saw Julian watching him with cold amusement. Accidents happen, Mr. Sterling, Julian said calmly. Perhaps you should go change. The smell of lobster is overpowering. Preston glared at me. His face was red with rage and humiliation. Clean this up, he hissed at Naomi. Now. He stormed out of the room, cursing under his breath. Naomi ran to the table with a cloth. She started wiping up the soup, her hands shaking. She was crying openly now. I'm sorry, she whispered to Julian. I'm so sorry. I knelt down beside her. I started picking up the pieces of the broken tureen lid. Let me help you, miss, I said softly. She looked at me. Her eyes were full of fear. He's going to kill us, she whispered. He's going to kill us both. I reached out and touched her hand. My skin was rough, calloused, but my touch was gentle. I leaned in close so only she could hear. Don't be afraid, little sparrow, I whispered. Naomi froze. Her eyes widened. She stared at me. Little Sparrow. It was my nickname for her, the one I used when she was a child when I would tuck her in at night. No one else knew it. Not Preston, not the world, only us. She looked at my face. She looked past the dyed hair, past the fake wrinkles, past the servant's uniform. She looked into my eyes. And for the first time in 20 years, she saw me. Dad, she breathed. I put a finger to my lips. Daddy's home, I whispered. And I'm going to fix this. I stood up. I took the cloth from her frozen hands. Go to the kitchen, I said loudly for the benefit of the hidden microphones I knew were recording. Get a mop. Naomi stood up slowly. She looked at me as if she had seen a ghost, but it wasn't a ghost of the dead. It was a ghost of hope. She turned and ran to the kitchen. I finished cleaning the spot. I stood up. I looked at Julian. He gave me a tiny, imperceptible nod. The trap was sprung. The bait was taken. And now the sparrow knew she had wings. Preston walked back into the room wearing a bathrobe. He looked ridiculous. He looked small. I apologize for the interruption, he said, trying to regain his composure. The help is incompetent. I will be firing him immediately. No need, Julian said, standing up. I think I've seen enough. Enough, Preston asked, panic creeping into his voice. But the deal? The deal stands, Julian said. I will have the papers drawn up tonight. We sign tomorrow at noon. Tomorrow, Preston asked. Why not now? I don't do business with men in bathrobes, Julian said. It's bad luck. He walked out. Preston slumped into his chair. He looked at the mess on the floor. He looked at me. Get out of my sight, he whispered. I walked out. I went to the kitchen. Naomi was standing there clutching a mop. She looked at me. I winked. She didn't smile. But the fear in her eyes was gone, replaced by something else. A question. And tonight in the darkness of the tool shed, I was going to give her the answer. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the night air thick and heavy with humidity. I sat on the edge of my cot in the tool shed, the darkness pressing in around me like a physical weight. It was 3 a.m, but sleep was a stranger to me. My mind was racing, replaying the scene from earlier. The soup, the fear in Naomi's eyes, the way she had whispered Dad. I knew she would come. I heard the soft click of the shed door latch lifting. A sliver of moonlight cut across the dusty floorboards as the door creaked open. Naomi stood there. She was still wearing her maid's uniform, but she had wrapped a shawl around her shoulders. She looked like a ghost, pale and trembling in the shadows. Dad, she whispered. I stood up. My knees popped, but I ignored the pain. I walked toward her. Naomi, I said. She didn't move. She just stared at me, her eyes searching my face, scanning for the father she remembered beneath the dye and the wrinkles. Is it really you? She asked, her voice breaking. Or am I dreaming? Am I finally losing my mind? It is me, Little Sparrow, I said, using the nickname only we knew. She let out a sob that sounded like something tearing. She ran to me. She threw her arms around my neck, burying her face in my shoulder. She smelled of cheap soap and bleach, the smell of a servant, not a daughter. But underneath that, she still smelled like Naomi, like lavender and hope. I held her tight. I felt how thin she was. I felt her ribs through the fabric of her uniform. I felt the tremors racking her body. I thought you were dead, she cried into my chest. He told me you were dead. He showed me the death certificate. He showed me the letter from the embassy. He lied, I said, stroking her hair. He lied about everything, Naomi. Why didn't you come sooner, she asked, pulling back slightly to look at me. Why did you leave me here? Why did you let him do this? I didn't know, I said. My voice was rough with the anger I was trying to suppress. I sent letters. I sent money. Millions of dollars, Naomi, every month. She shook her head. I never got anything. Not a letter, not a dime. He said you died broke. He said you gambled it all away and left me with nothing but debt. He said he was the only reason I wasn't on the street. I gripped her shoulders. He intercepted everything I said. He stole your life, Naomi. He stole your inheritance. She looked down at the floor, shame coloring her cheeks. I believed him, she whispered. I was so scared, Dad. He changed after you left. At first he was charming. He said he would take care of me. But then the debts started. Or he said there were debts. He said the house was in foreclosure. He said he had to sell my jewelry to pay the mortgage. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. Then he started getting angry. He started punishing me. He said I had to earn my keep. He made me clean. He made me cook. He made me sleep in the pantry. He said I was lucky he didn't throw me out. I felt a cold fury rising in my chest, a fury so intense it frightened me. He hit you, I asked. She flinched. Not often. Mostly he just breaks things. Or he locks me in my room. Or he brings women home. She covered her face with her hands. He brings them here, Dad, to our house, and he makes me serve them. He makes me clean up after them. It is so humiliating. I wanted to die. I prayed to die. I pulled her hands away from her face. I looked deep into her eyes. You are not going to die, I said, and you are not going to serve him anymore. But what can we do? She asked, hopeless. He owns everything. He has the papers. He has the lawyers. If we fight him, he will destroy us. I laughed. It was a low, dark sound. He doesn't own anything, Naomi. The papers are fake. The lawyers are paid for with my money. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the satellite phone I had used to call Thorne. Take this, I said, pressing it into her hand. What is it? She asked. It is a weapon, I said. It is a satellite phone. Encrypted. Untraceable. He can't monitor it. He can't block it. I leaned in close. From now on, Naomi, you are not his victim. You are my spy. Her eyes widened. Spy? I need evidence, I said. I need to know where he keeps the real papers. I need to know his passwords. I need to know who he talks to. But I am just the maid, she said. Exactly, I said. No one pays attention to the maid. You are invisible to him. You can go places he doesn't think to guard. I pulled up a recording app on the phone. Record everything I said. Every threat. Every lie. Every time he brings a woman home. Every time he mentions money. Naomi looked at the phone. She looked at me. I saw a spark in her eyes. A tiny flicker of the fire she used to have. Can we really beat him? She asked. We aren't just going to beat him, I said. We are going to bury him. I told her about the plan, about the billionaire investor, about the trap I was laying. He is greedy, Naomi, and greed makes men stupid. He thinks he is about to get $10 million. He is going to sign anything to get it, and when he does, he signs his own death warrant. Naomi nodded slowly. She gripped the phone tighter. I will do it, she said. I will get you everything. Good girl, I said. We stood there in the dark silence of the shed, father and daughter reunited in the wreckage of our lives. Suddenly a bright light flashed through the cracks in the wooden walls. A flashlight beam swept across the yard. Then came the pounding on the door, heavy, violent. Open up, Preston's voice roared from outside. Naomi froze. She looked at me with terrified eyes. He found us, she whispered. He is going to kill us. Hide the phone, I hissed. Under your dress. She shoved the phone into her waistband. Open this door, old man, Preston shouted. I know she is in there. I saw her leave the house. What are you doing with my maid? He rattled the handle. The flimsy lock strained. I looked at Naomi. Play the part, I whispered. Be scared. Be submissive. Don't let him see the fire. She nodded, taking a deep breath. She slumped her shoulders. She lowered her head. I walked to the door. I unlocked it. Preston pushed it open. He stood there in his silk robe, holding a heavy flashlight like a club. His face was twisted in suspicion and rage. What is going on here? He demanded, shining the light in my face, blinding me. Why are you in here, Naomi? I squinted against the light, holding up my hands. She was just asking for aspirin, sir. I lied, my voice trembling. She said she had a headache. I have some in my kit. Preston looked at me. He looked at Naomi, cowering in the corner. Aspirin, he scoffed. You woke me up for aspirin. He walked over to Naomi. He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. Are you sleeping with him? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Are you sleeping with the gardener? No, sir. Naomi whimpered. I swear, my head hurt. Preston released her chin with a shove. You disgust me, he said. Both of you. He turned to me. Stay away from her, old man. She is my property. You just work here, and barely that. He grabbed Naomi's arm. Come on, he said, dragging her toward the door. You have work to do. The billionaire is coming back tomorrow to sign the papers. I need the house spotless. He pulled her out into the night. Naomi looked back at me one last time. She didn't wave, she didn't smile, but her hand went to her waist where the phone was hidden. She touched it. It was a signal. I watched them disappear into the darkness. Preston thought he had reasserted control. He thought he had put the help back in their place. He didn't know that he had just walked away with a wiretap in his house. He didn't know that the maid was now a soldier. I closed the door. I sat back down on the cot. The game had changed. I wasn't alone anymore. I had an army of one, and she was inside the walls. Tomorrow Preston would sign the deal of a lifetime, and tomorrow he would lose everything. I lay back and smiled in the dark. Sleep well, Preston, I whispered, because your nightmare is just beginning. The air in the dining room was thick with the scent of expensive cigars and the heavier musk of desperate greed. The dinner had ended an hour ago, but we were still sitting at the table, the debris of the meal scattered around us like the wreckage of a battle. I stood in the corner in my ill-fitting tuxedo holding a silver tray and watching the final act of the play I had written. My daughter Naomi was clearing the dessert plates, her hands trembling so much the china clattered softly. She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes, but I gave her a subtle nod. Stay calm, little sparrow. The trap is about to snap shut. Julian, playing the role of Mr. Farouk to perfection, leaned back in his chair and swirled his cognac. He looked at Preston with a mixture of boredom and amusement. Preston was sweating. He had loosened his tie and his eyes were fixed on Julian's face, searching for the sign that he had been saved. Mr. Sterling, Julian said, his voice smooth as silk. I must admit I am intrigued by your proposition. This estate is magnificent. It has history, it has character, and the location is undeniable. Preston leaned forward eagerly. It is a gem, Mr. Farouk, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I have poured my heart and soul into this place. And $10 million is a steal. Julian held up a hand. However, my auditors have raised a concern. Preston froze. A concern. Yes, Julian continued. It appears there are some irregularities with your liquidity. There are liens against the property, outstanding debts to a bank that was recently acquired. Preston swallowed hard. Oh, that is just a clerical error, a misunderstanding with the previous lender. I am in the process of clearing it up. Julian smiled a shark-like grin. I do not like clerical errors, Mr. Sterling. I like clean deals. I like transparency. If I am to invest $10 million into this property, I need to know that my investment is secure. I need to know that you are solvent. I am solvent, Preston lied. I have assets. You have debt. Julian cut him off. Significant debt, but I am a generous man. I am willing to help you clear the slate. Preston's eyes lit up. You are. I am proposing a partnership, Julian said. I will not buy the house outright today. Instead, I will purchase a 50% stake in the property for $10 million. This will give you the cash you need to pay off your creditors and secure your standing. We will co-own the estate until such time as you are ready to sell the remainder. $10 million for half, Preston breathed. He was doing the math. $10 million would pay off the $5 million he owed the bank. It would pay off the credit cards. It would leave him with $4 million in cash. He would be rich again. He would be safe. That sounds incredibly generous, he said. There is a condition, Julian said. Preston stiffened. What condition? Julian snapped his fingers. Thorne stepped forward out of the shadows where he had been standing guard. He placed a thick leather folio on the table in front of Preston. Thorne opened the folio. Inside was a single document. It was printed on heavy cream-colored paper. This is a debt consolidation and equity transfer agreement, Julian explained. It states that I am providing the funds to clear your existing liabilities. In exchange, you are transferring 50% of the deed to my holding company. Preston reached for a pen. Where do I sign? Read it first, Julian said. Specifically, the disclosure clause. Preston looked at the paper. He scanned the dense legal text. His eyes glazed over. He wasn't reading. He was looking for the signature line. He was looking for the money. It says here, Julian pointed a manicured finger at a paragraph in the middle of the page, that you acknowledge all existing debts are valid and that you are using these funds to satisfy them. It also states that any future default or misrepresentation of your financial status will result in the immediate forfeiture of the remaining 50% of the asset to the primary lien holder. Who is the primary lien holder? Preston asked. The bank that holds your mortgage, Julian said. Or whoever owns that bank. Preston waved his hand. Fine, fine. I am paying them off anyway. Who cares who holds the note if it is paid? He didn't ask who owned the bank. He didn't ask who Silas King was. He was too arrogant to imagine that the old man he thought was dead could be the one holding the leash. There is one more thing, Julian said. A personal guarantee. Since your credit is damaged, I need you to sign a confession of judgment. It basically says that if you violate the terms of this agreement, you surrender all rights to contest the seizure of your assets. It speeds up the process. Preston hesitated. That sounds risky. Julian shrugged. It is standard for high-risk borrowers, Mr. Sterling. Take it or leave it. My jet leaves for Dubai in 2 hours. If you don't want the money, I am sure there are other estates in Atlanta. He made a move to close the folio. No, Preston shouted, grabbing the leather cover. No, I will sign. I will sign anything. He picked up the pen. His hand was shaking. He looked at the $10 million figure at the top of the page. It was his lifeline. It was his salvation. He didn't read the fine print at the very bottom. Clause 88. The clause that stated that the primary lien holder was defined as the King Family Trust, and that any violation of the moral conduct provision, including fraud, theft, or abuse of dependence, would trigger immediate liquidation of the borrower's assets to said trust. He didn't know he was signing his life away to me. He pressed the pen to the paper. He signed his name with a flourish. Preston Sterling. There, he said, dropping the pen. It is done. Julian picked up the document. He checked the signature. He nodded to Thorne. Transfer the funds, Julian said. Thorne pulled out a tablet. He tapped the screen a few times. Transaction complete, Sir Thorne said. Preston pulled out his phone. He opened his banking app. He refreshed the screen. His eyes bulged. His mouth fell open. $10 million. It was there. A 1 followed by 7 zeros. It was real. Preston let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He jumped up from his chair. He pumped his fist in the air. Yes, he screamed. Yes. I am back. I am back, baby. He looked at Julian. Thank you, Mr. Farouk. You have no idea. You saved my life. Julian stood up. He buttoned his jacket. I expect I did, Mr. Sterling. Now, if you will excuse me, I have a plane to catch. We will be in touch regarding the management of the property. Of course, Preston said, ushering them toward the door. Anything you need. My house is your house. Literally, Julian said dryly. I opened the front door for them. Julian paused as he passed me. He didn't look at me, but I saw the ghost of a wink. Thorne gave a slight nod. The door closed. Preston stood in the foyer alone. He looked at his phone again just to make sure. The numbers were still there. He started to laugh. It was a maniacal sound, a release of weeks of terror. He danced a little jig on the marble floor. I am rich, he shouted. I am rich again. Naomi walked into the foyer carrying a tray of dirty glasses. She looked at him with wide, fearful eyes. Preston, she whispered. Is it true? Did he give you the money? Preston stopped dancing. He turned to look at her. The relief on his face vanished, replaced instantly by a sneer of contempt. He looked at her maid's uniform. He looked at her tired face. He looked at me standing by the door in my tuxedo. He walked over to Naomi. He slapped the tray out of her hands. The glasses shattered on the floor. Yes, he said. He gave me the money, which means I don't need you anymore. Naomi recoiled, stepping back into the shards of glass. What do you mean, Preston? I mean the act is over, he said. I needed you to play the part of the dutiful wife to get the house. I needed you to scrub the floors to save money on maids. But now I have $10 million. He stepped closer to her, invading her space. I don't need a wife who looks like a hag, he spat. I don't need a wife who reminds me of being poor. I can buy a model now. I can buy 10 models. He pointed to the door. Get out, he said. Naomi stared at him. But where will I go? This is my home. This is my home, Preston roared. I own half of it and my partner owns the other half. You own nothing. You are a charity case. Your father is dead and you are broke." He laughed. "I am doing you a favor," he said. "Go find a shelter. Go find a gutter. Just get out of my sight, you disgust me." He turned to me. "And you, old man," he said, "you are fired. Get your trash out of my shed. I am hiring a real staff tomorrow. People who don't smell like fertilizer." He looked at his phone again, smiling at the balance. "I am going to celebrate," he said. "I am going to call Jessica. We are going to Paris." He walked toward the stairs, heading up to the master bedroom to pack his bag. "Tao Jiao Roy," he shouted, his voice echoing through the house. "I am rich. Consent Naomi Chuan be Don Radung. Maid Naomi get ready to hit the street." Naomi stood in the broken glass, trembling. She looked at me. Her eyes were full of panic. "Dad," she whispered, "what do we do?" I walked over to her. I took her hands. They were cold. "We wait," I said calmly. "Wait for what?" She asked, crying. "He is kicking us out." I looked at the stairs where Preston had disappeared. "We wait for the bank," I said. I pulled out my phone. I dialed the number for the fraud department of the bank I had just bought, the bank that held Preston's account. "Execute the freeze," I said into the phone. The voice on the other end was prompt. "Yes, Mr. King. Locking the account now. Flagging for suspicious activity." I hung up. I looked at Naomi. "Go to your room," I said. "Pack a bag." She looked confused. "Are we leaving?" "No," I said. "We are staying. But the locks are about to change." Upstairs I heard a scream. It wasn't a scream of joy. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated horror. Preston had just tried to transfer money to his girlfriend. Transaction declined. Account frozen. Contact administrator. I smiled. The mouse had eaten the cheese, and the trap bar had just snapped his neck. He was coming down the stairs now. I could hear him running. "Let him come," I whispered to Naomi. "Daddy is here, and I am the administrator." The air conditioner hummed in the small, windowless tool shed I now shared with my daughter. It was a tight squeeze, 2 cots pushed against opposite walls, a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. But compared to the atmosphere inside the main house, this shed felt like a sanctuary. Preston had wasted no time. The ink on the contract was barely dry when he evicted Naomi from her own bedroom. "I need the space," he had said, his voice cold and dismissive. "You are cramping my style. And frankly, you smell like cleaning fluid. Go sleep with the gardener. You two deserve each other." Naomi had come to me in tears, carrying a small bag of clothes. She was shaking not from cold, but from the sheer brutality of his rejection. He hadn't just kicked her out. He had erased her. He had replaced her. I watched through the crack in the shed door as a moving van pulled up. Not a moving van for furniture, but for clothes. Racks of designer dresses, shoes, and furs were wheeled into the house, and behind them came Jessica, the mistress. She walked in like she owned the place, her heels clicking on the marble foyer my daughter had scrubbed just yesterday. She was laughing, holding onto Preston's arm. "This is amazing, baby," she squealed. "And you said the wife wouldn't mind." Preston laughed. "The wife knows her place," he said. "She knows who pays the bills now." I felt Naomi stiffen beside me. She was watching too, her face pressed against the rough wood of the shed wall. "He brought her here," she whispered. "Into my house. Into my room. It is not your room anymore, little sparrow," I said softly. "Not for long." I put my arm around her. She leaned into me, seeking comfort, seeking strength. "Why, Dad?" she asked. "Why is he doing this? He has the money. He has the 10 million. Why does he have to be so cruel?" "Because money doesn't change people, Naomi," I said. "It just amplifies who they already are. Preston was always a monster. He just didn't have the teeth to show it. Now he does." I looked at the house. The lights were blazing in every window. Music was thumping a heavy bass rhythm that vibrated the ground. They were having a party, a celebration of their victory. But they didn't know it was a wake. Naomi looked at me. Her eyes were red and swollen, but there was a new hardness in them, a steel that hadn't been there before. "I want to kill him," she said. I squeezed her shoulder. "Don't," I said. "Anger is a good fuel but a bad driver. You need to be cold, Naomi. You need to be patient." "Patient," she scoffed. "He is in there with her, sleeping in my bed, drinking my wine. How can I be patient?" "Because," I said, looking at my watch, "it is almost midnight, and at midnight the bank runs its nightly batch processing." What does that mean, she asked. It means I said that the $10 million he thinks he has, the $10 million he is spending right now, is about to disappear. I pulled out my satellite phone. I showed her the screen. It was a tracking app linked to the account I had set up for the fake investor, Mr. Farouk. Watch, I said. We watched the numbers. The balance showed $10,000. It was green. Solid. Real. The minutes ticked by. 11:58, 11:59, midnight. The screen refreshed. The numbers turned red. Account status frozen. Reason code 99AML. Anti-money laundering investigation. Naomi gasped. You froze it. I didn't just freeze it, I said. I flagged it. I had Thorne send a tip to the Treasury Department, an anonymous tip about a large, suspicious transfer from an offshore account to a known gambler with massive debts. I smiled in the dark. The bank's algorithm did the rest. Any transaction over $10,000 triggers a review. A transaction of $10 million from a shell company in Dubai to a personal account in Atlanta. That triggers a lockdown. So he can't spend it, she asked. He can't touch a dime, I said. Not until he proves where it came from. And he can't prove it because the investor doesn't exist. Naomi looked at the house again. The music was still playing. The lights were still on. He doesn't know yet, she whispered. No, I said. He is probably popping another bottle of champagne. He is probably promising Jessica a diamond ring. He thinks he is the king of the world. But tomorrow morning, I said, he is going to try to pay the caterers, or buy a car, or transfer money to his bookie, and the card is going to decline. We sat there in the silence of the shed listening to the party. It sounded different now. It sounded hollow. It sounded like the last gasp of a dying animal. Go to sleep, Naomi, I said. You need your rest. Tomorrow is going to be a busy day. She lay down on the cot. She pulled the thin blanket up to her chin. Dad, she said. Yes, Sparrow. Thank you for coming back. I reached out and touched her hand. I never left, I said. I was just waiting for the right moment. I sat up a while longer watching the house, watching the shadows move in the windows. Preston was celebrating his own funeral, and I was the only one who knew the eulogy. I closed my eyes and drifted into a light sleep. I woke up to screaming. It wasn't Naomi. It was coming from the house. It was Preston. I sat up. Sunlight was streaming through the cracks in the wall. It was morning. I looked at Naomi. She was awake, sitting up on her cot, her eyes wide. What is happening? She asked. I stood up. I walked to the door and opened it a crack. Preston was on the back patio. He was wearing his silk robe, but he looked like a madman. He was holding his phone, screaming into it. What do you mean, frozen? He yelled. It is my money. I just deposited it yesterday. $10 million. He paced back and forth, kicking the patio furniture. Suspicious activity, he shrieked. I am a businessman. I just sold half my house. That is legitimate income. He stopped. He listened to the person on the other end. You need what? He asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. A source of funds affidavit. From the buyer. He looked around the yard. He looked at the garden where I was supposed to be working. He looked at the tool shed. Mr. Farouk, he muttered. I need Farouk. He hung up the phone. He dialed another number. I knew it was the number for the fake investor. It went straight to voicemail. Of course it did. The phone was at the bottom of the Chattahoochee River. Preston dialed again. And again. He threw the phone. It smashed against the brick wall of the house. Damn it, he screamed. Damn it all. Jessica walked out onto the patio. She was wearing a silk kimono, holding a cup of coffee. What is wrong, baby? She asked. Why are you yelling? My money, Preston said, his voice trembling. The bank. They locked the account. Just for a few days. A misunderstanding. He looked at her. He tried to smile, but it looked like a grimace. Don't worry, babe. I will fix it. I just need to find Farouk. Jessica frowned. Locked? She asked. Does that mean we can't go shopping today? Preston flinched. Not today, he said. Maybe tomorrow. Jessica's face hardened. You promised me a bracelet, Preston. You promised me Paris. I know, he said. And you will get it. I swear. Just give me a minute. He ran his hands through his hair. He looked wild. Where is the gardener? He shouted. Where is that old man? He gave me the number. He knows where Farouk is. He started running toward the shed. I looked at Naomi. Get ready, I said, ready for what she asked. For the show, I said. I opened the door just as Preston reached it. He almost ran into me. You, he breathed. You old fool. Where is he? Where is who, sir? I asked, playing the confused servant. Farouk Preston yelled, grabbing my shirt. The Arab, the buyer. Where did he go? His phone is dead. I don't know, sir, I said. He left last night. He said he was going back to Dubai. Dubai, Preston whispered. No, he can't be gone. I need him. I need him to call the bank. He shook me. Do you have another number? He asked. An email, anything. I shook my head. No, sir, just the card. Preston let go of me. He staggered back. He looked at the house. He looked at Jessica, who was watching him with growing suspicion. He was trapped. He had $10 million he couldn't touch. He had debts he couldn't pay. And he had a mistress who was about to realize he was a fraud. He looked at me. His eyes narrowed. You did this, he hissed. Somehow. You cursed me. I am just a gardener, sir, I said. Get out of my sight, he spat. Both of you. Stay in the shed. If I see you, I will set the dogs on you. He turned and ran back to the house. He was going to try to fix it. He was going to try to forge documents. He was going to try to bribe the bank, but he didn't know that the bank was me. I closed the door. He is panicking, Naomi said. Yes, I said. And when a man like Preston panics, he makes mistakes. Big mistakes. I picked up my phone. I sent a text to Thorne. He knows. The squeeze is on. Send in the cavalry. The reply came back. Police are en route. ETA 10 minutes. I looked at Naomi. Put your shoes on, I said. Why, she asked. Because I said, opening the door again. We aren't staying in the shed anymore. We are going to the front row. It is time to watch him fall. The sirens were getting louder. They started as a distant wail barely audible over the thumping of Preston's frantic pacing in the living room. But now they were a crescendo, a symphony of impending doom closing in on the mansion from all sides. Blue and red lights flashed through the sheer curtains, painting the expensive furniture in chaotic strokes of color. Preston stopped pacing. He looked at the window. He looked at the phone in his hand, which was now useless as his accounts were frozen. He looked at Naomi, who was standing by the fireplace, her hands clasped tight, her face pale. "What did you do?" he screamed. His voice was a high-pitched shriek of terror. "I did nothing," Naomi whispered. "I swear, Preston." "You called them," he yelled. "You called the police. You told them about the money. You told them about the fake investor." He ran to her, grabbing her shoulders and shaking her. "You betrayed me," he hissed, "after everything I did for you. I gave you a home. I gave you a purpose. And this is how you repay me." He threw her back. She stumbled and fell onto the hearthrug. Preston ran to the window and peeked through the blinds. "They are everywhere," he muttered. "Police, FBI, IRS, they have the place surrounded." He turned back to the room, his eyes wild, scanning for an escape. But there was no escape. The gates were locked. The perimeter was secure. He was trapped in the cage he had built for himself. He ran to the desk in the corner and pulled open a drawer. He rummaged through papers and office supplies until his hand found what it was looking for. A gun. A snub-nosed revolver he had bought years ago for protection. He pulled it out. His hand was shaking so bad he almost dropped it. He pointed it at Naomi. "Get up," he ordered. Preston. "No," Naomi cried, scrambling backward on the floor. "Please, put it down." "Get up," he screamed. "You are my leverage. You are my ticket out of here. They won't shoot if I have a hostage." He grabbed her arm and hauled her to her feet. He pressed the barrel of the gun against her temple. Naomi squeezed her eyes shut, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We are going out there," he said, his breath hot and sour in her ear. "We are going to walk to the car, and if anyone tries to stop me, I will blow your brains out. Do you understand?" "Yes," she whimpered. He started dragging her toward the front door. He was panting, sweating, his eyes darting back and forth. He looked like a cornered rat, vicious and unpredictable. They reached the foyer. The heavy oak door loomed ahead. Beyond it lay the flashing lights and the armed men. "Open it," Preston commanded. Naomi reached for the handle. Her hand trembled. "Do it," he yelled, jabbing the gun into her skin. She turned the knob. She pulled the door open. But they didn't step out, because someone was standing in the doorway blocking their path. It wasn't a police officer. It wasn't a federal agent. It was me. I stood there silhouetted against the flashing lights of the police cars parked in the driveway. But I wasn't wearing my gardener's clothes anymore. The stained canvas pants, the frayed shirt, the worn-out boots were gone. I was wearing a suit. A bespoke Brioni three-piece suit, charcoal gray, cut to fit me perfectly. My shirt was crisp white Egyptian cotton. My tie was silk, a deep crimson red. My shoes were polished leather shining in the strobe lights. I looked at Preston. I looked at the gun pressed against my daughter's head. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I just stood there, calm as a mountain. Preston froze. He stared at me. His brain couldn't process what he was seeing. The old man, the gardener, the beggar. "Who are you?" he whispered. I took a step forward into the light of the foyer. "Put the gun down, Preston," I said. My voice was deep, resonant, filled with a power he had never heard from me before. He blinked rapidly. "Arthur," he asked, "the gardener, what are you doing?" "Where did you get those clothes?" "I am not Arthur," I said, "and I am not a gardener." I took another step. "Stay back," he screamed, tightening his grip on Naomi. "Stay back or I will shoot her. I swear I will shoot her." "You won't shoot her," I said, "because you are a coward, Preston. You only hurt people who can't fight back. You only steal from people who trust you. But now you are facing a man who knows exactly what you are." He stared at me. He looked at the suit. He looked at the way I stood, the way I held myself. "Who are you?" he asked again, his voice trembling. "I am the landlord," I said. "I am the banker. I am the investor." I looked him in the eye. "And I am her father." Preston's jaw dropped. "Her father, Silas. But you are dead. You died in Singapore. I saw the certificate. I wrote the certificate, I said. Just like I wrote the check you tried to cash this morning. Just like I wrote the lease you violated." He shook his head. No, that is impossible. You are a bum. You begged me for a job. I was testing you," I said. "I wanted to see if there was a single shred of decency in you, a single drop of honor, but there wasn't, was there? You are rotten to the core." I took another step. I was 10 feet away now. "Put the gun down, Conra," I said, using the word for son-in-law with dripping irony. "The game is over." Preston looked at the gun. He looked at Naomi. He looked at me. He looked at the police cars outside. "It is over," he whispered. Then his face twisted. A mask of pure hate slammed down over his fear. "No," he screamed. "It is not over. If I go down, I am taking everything with me." He raised the gun. He pointed it not at Naomi, but at me. "You ruined me," he yelled. "You tricked me." He pulled the trigger. Click. The hammer fell on an empty chamber. He pulled it again. Click. And again. Click, click, click. He stared at the gun in horror. "Why? Why won't it shoot?" "Because I unloaded it last night," I said, "while you were sleeping. While you were dreaming of spending my money." I walked up to him. I reached out and took the gun from his shaking hand. It was heavy, cold metal. I handed it to the police officer who had just stepped up behind me. "Take him," I said. 2 officers grabbed Preston. They slammed him against the wall. They cuffed his hands behind his back. He was screaming now. Incoherent rage, cursing me, cursing Naomi, cursing the world. I ignored him. I looked at Naomi. She was standing there, trembling, tears streaming down her face. She looked at me. She looked at the suit. She looked at the face of the father she thought was dead. "Dad," she whispered. I opened my arms. She ran to me. She buried her face in my chest, sobbing. I held her. I stroked her hair. "It is okay, Sparrow," I said. "It is okay. I am here." We stood there in the foyer of the house I had bought while the police dragged the man who had stolen it away. The nightmare was over. The king had returned, and justice was served. The silence in the foyer was heavy enough to crush a man. Outside, the flashing blue and red lights of the police cruisers cut through the sheer curtains, painting the walls in a chaotic rhythm of violence, but inside the air was still. Preston stood there, the gun trembling in his hand, the barrel wavering between my chest and Naomi's head. He looked at me. He really looked at me for the first time in 10 years. But he didn't see the man standing in front of him. He refused to see. He laughed. It was a wet, broken sound that bubbled up from his throat like bile. "You look ridiculous," he spat, his eyes darting up and down my bespoke suit. "Look at you, Arthur, or whatever your name is today. You think putting on a costume makes you someone? You think stealing a suit from my closet makes you a man?" He took a step closer, the gun steadying on my chest. "Take it off," he hissed. "Take it off right now. You are a gardener. You are a servant. You smell like fertilizer and poverty. You don't get to wear silk. You don't get to stand there and look at me like you are my equal." I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I adjusted my cufflink, a small movement that caught the light. It was solid gold engraved with the crest of the King family. "It is not your suit, Preston," I said, my voice calm, deep, and resonating with the authority of a man who had commanded armies of workers. "It never was. Just like this house was never yours. Just like my daughter was never yours." He shook his head violently, sweat flying from his forehead. "Shut up," he screamed. "Shut up, you senile old fool. You are hallucinating. You think you are some kind of hero. You are nothing. You are the dirt on my shoe." He was unraveling. The reality he had constructed the world where he was the king and I was the peasant was fracturing. He couldn't process the visual data in front of him. He couldn't reconcile the old man who slept in the shed with the Titan standing in the foyer. Suddenly, the heavy oak front door swung open behind me. Preston flinched, turning the gun toward the door. "Don't come in," he yelled. "I will shoot. I swear to God I will shoot." 2 men walked in. They didn't have their guns drawn. They didn't look afraid. They walked with the confidence of men who know exactly who is in charge. The first was Thorne, my lawyer. He was holding a thick leather briefcase. He looked at Preston with an expression of mild distaste, as if he were looking at a stain on a rug. The second was Chief Holloway, the head of the Atlanta Police Department. He was in full uniform, his brass stars gleaming under the chandelier. Preston's eyes went wide. He lowered the gun slightly, confusion warring with his panic. "Chief," he stammered. "Chief, get this man out of here. He is an intruder. He is crazy. He broke into my house and stole my clothes." Chief Holloway didn't look at Preston. He didn't even acknowledge him. He walked straight up to me. He stopped 3 feet away and snapped his heels together. "Mr. King," the chief said, his voice respectful. "The perimeter is invalid. My men are standing by. We are ready to extract the hostile on your command." Thorne stepped up beside him. He opened the briefcase and pulled out a single document. "Good evening, Mr. Chairman," Thorne said. "I have the original deeds and the transfer protocols you requested. The fraud investigation is already underway. The district attorney is waiting for your call. Chairman, Mr. King." The words hung in the air like smoke. Preston looked at the chief. He looked at Thorne. Then he looked back at me. His face went from red to a sickly shade of gray. His mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. "Chairman," he whispered. "What are they talking about? Who are you?" I took a step forward. The sound of my polished leather shoes on the marble floor was sharp and definitive. "I am not the gardener, Preston," I said. "I never was." I reached into my jacket pocket. Preston flinched, raising the gun again, but I moved slowly, deliberately. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was yellowed with age, brittle to the touch. I unfolded it. "This is the bill of sale for the property at 4000 West Paces Ferry Road," I said. "Dated 20 years ago. Paid in full, in cash." I held it up. "Look at the signature," I said. Preston squinted. His hand was shaking so bad the gun was rattling. "Silas King," he read. "That is me," I said. "I bought this land when it was just trees and mud." I continued, my voice hard. "I hired the architects. I approved the blueprints. I planted the oak tree in the front yard. I built this house as a sanctuary for my daughter, a fortress to keep her safe from the world." I took another step. "And then you came along." I looked at him with a disgust that felt heavy in my chest. "You came with your cheap suits and your expensive lies. You convinced her that you were a savior. You convinced her that her father was a deadbeat, a failure, a ghost. You forged a death certificate. You forged a deed. You built a kingdom on a foundation of paper and lies." Preston shook his head back and forth, a frantic denial of the truth that was crushing him. "No," he moaned. "No, that is fake. I have the deed. It is in my safe. Your safe is empty," I said. "Just like your soul. Just like your bank account." Thorne stepped forward, holding up a tablet. "The documents you possess, Mr. Sterling, are high-quality forgeries," Thorne said, his voice dry. "But they lack the digital watermarks of the county clerk. We have already filed the motion. The property has been legally reclaimed by the King Trust. You are not the owner. You are not even a tenant. You are a squatter and a thief." Preston looked at the tablet. He looked at the chief of police, who was staring at him with his hand on his holster, waiting for an excuse. He looked at Naomi. She was standing against the wall, her hands covering her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of horror and awe. She was looking at me. She was seeing the father she thought she had lost. She was seeing the power I had hidden from her. "Daddy," she whispered. Preston heard her. He looked at her, and he saw the end. He saw his wife looking at me with love. He saw his authority evaporating like mist in the sun. He snapped. The last thread of his sanity broke. He realized there was no way out. He couldn't talk his way out of this. He couldn't buy his way out. He was cornered. "If I can't have it," he screamed, his voice rising to a shriek, "nobody can." He raised the gun. He didn't point it at Naomi this time. He pointed it directly at my chest, at the heart he thought he could stop. "You ruined me," he yelled. "You tricked me. You old bastard. You think you can just walk in here and take my life. You think you can humiliate me." I stood still. I didn't raise my hands. I didn't beg. I looked him in the eye. "I didn't take your life." "Preston," I said, "you threw it away." "Die," he screamed. "Die." He squeezed the trigger. I saw his finger whiten on the metal. I saw the hammer pull back. I saw the cylinder rotate. Naomi screamed, "No!" Thorne flinched. The chief reached for his weapon. Click. The sound was small, insignificant. A metallic snap of steel hitting empty space. There was no bang. There was no flash. There was no bullet tearing through my chest. Preston froze. He stared at the gun. He looked confused. He pulled the trigger again. Click. And again. Click, click, click. He looked at the weapon in his hand as if it had betrayed him. He shook it. He looked down the barrel. "Why?" he whispered. "It is loaded. I loaded it myself. Because I said my voice cutting through his panic, I unloaded it last night." Preston looked up at me. His eyes were wide, vacant. "Last night I continued stepping closer until I was looming over him. While you were sleeping. While you were dreaming of spending my money. While you were drooling on my pillow. I came into your room. I took the gun from the nightstand. I removed the firing pin, and I put it back. I reached out and took the gun from his hand. He didn't resist. He was too in shock. He let it go. I handed it to the chief. "Evidence," I said. You were in my room," Preston stammered. "You watched me sleep." "I have been watching you for weeks," I said. "I have been the ghost in your halls. I have been the shadow in your garden. I have seen every sin. I have heard every lie." I leaned in close. "I know you, Preston. I know you are a coward. I knew you would try to use this gun when you realized you had lost. I knew you wouldn't have the guts to fight like a man." Preston sank to his knees. The fight went out of him. The rage drained away, leaving only a hollow shell of a man who had gambled everything on a bluff and lost. He looked up at me. Tears streamed down his face. "Who are you?" he whispered. I straightened my jacket. I adjusted my tie. "I am the man who cleans up the trash," I said. I looked at the chief. "Get him out of my house." The chief nodded. 2 officers stepped forward. They hauled Preston to his feet. He didn't fight. He didn't scream. He just hung there limp and broken. "Wait," he mumbled as they dragged him toward the door. "Wait. Naomi. Tell them I am your husband." Naomi stepped forward. She wiped the tears from her face. She looked at the man who had enslaved her. "You are not my husband," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "You are a stranger, and you are trespassing." Preston let out a sob, a sound of pure despair. They dragged him out into the night, into the waiting sirens, into the rain. The door slammed shut. Silence returned to the foyer. I stood there in the center of the room. My lawyer was there, the police chief was there. But all I saw was my daughter. She stood by the wall, shivering. She looked at me. She looked at the suit. She looked at the face of the father she had mourned for 10 years. "Dad," she whispered. I opened my arms. Naomi. She ran. She ran across the marble floor. She threw herself into my arms. She buried her face in my chest and wept. I held her. I held her tight. I smelled the fear on her, but underneath it I smelled the lavender. I smelled my little girl. "It is okay," I whispered, stroking her hair. "It is okay. I am here. I am real." "You came back," she sobbed. "You really came back." "I never left," I said. We stood there for a long time, father and daughter, reunited in the house that love built and greed had almost destroyed. The war was over. The enemy was gone. But as I held her, I knew the hard work was just beginning. We had to rebuild. We had to heal. But we would do it together. I looked over her head at Thorne. He nodded and quietly left the room, taking the chief with him. We were alone. Finally. "I am home, Sparrow," I said, "and this time I am staying." The click of the firing pin hitting empty air echoed through the foyer like a gavel sentencing a man to death. Preston stood there, the useless gun dangling from his trembling fingers, his face a portrait of shattered reality. He had pulled the trigger. He had tried to kill me. And in that fraction of a second, he had crossed a line from which there was no return. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. I simply nodded to the men standing in the shadows. Two of my personal security detail men who had guarded oil fields in dangerous parts of the world stepped out from behind the pillars. They didn't shout. They didn't warn him. They moved with the terrifying efficiency of predators. The first guard, a man named Stone, whose neck was thicker than Preston's thigh, struck Preston's wrist with a baton. The sound of bone cracking was sharp and sickening. Preston screamed, dropping the gun. Before it hit the marble floor, the second guard swept his legs. Preston hit the ground hard. The breath left his body in a wet grunt. He tried to scramble away, tried to crawl toward the door, but Stone planted a heavy boot in the center of his back, pinning him to the floor like a bug. I walked over to him. I picked up the gun. It felt light in my hand. Cheap. I handed it to Chief Holloway, who bagged it as evidence with a shake of his head. "Get him up," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. Stone hauled Preston to his feet. He was wheezing, clutching his broken wrist. His eyes were wild, darting around the room, looking for an ally, looking for an escape. "Jessica," he screamed, looking toward the living room where his mistress had been watching the spectacle. "Jessica, help me. Call your lawyer. Call anyone." I looked toward the archway. Jessica was standing there. She was wearing the silk robe she had stolen from my daughter's closet. She looked at Preston, bleeding and broken in the grip of the guards. She looked at me, standing tall in my bespoke suit, the master of the house. And then she looked at the situation. She was a survivor, a parasite, and she knew when the host was dying. She didn't run to help him. She ran to the side table where Preston had left his wallet and his watch, a platinum Rolex he had bought with the initial deposit from the fake investor. She grabbed the watch. She grabbed the wallet. Jessica Preston yelled confusion, warring with pain in his voice. "What are you doing?" She looked at him with cold, dead eyes. "I am taking my severance package," she said. She opened the wallet, pulling out the thick wad of cash Preston kept for emergencies. She stuffed it into her bra. She strapped the watch onto her wrist. "You promised me Paris," she spat at him. "You promised me the world, and all you gave me was a front row seat to your funeral." She turned to me. She didn't apologize. She didn't beg. She knew better. She just nodded a recognition of power from one shark to another. "I am leaving," she said. "I was never here. I let her go. She was meaningless. She was just another symptom of the disease that was Preston Sterling." Preston watched her run out the back door, taking the last of his liquid assets with her. He let out a howl of despair that sounded less like a man and more like a wounded animal. "She took it," he sobbed. "She took my watch. She took my money." "It wasn't your money," I said, "and it wasn't your watch." I signaled to Stone, "Bring him here." They dragged Preston to the center of the foyer, right under the crystal chandelier. He sagged in their grip, his legs useless. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the blood from his nose. "Dad," he whispered, "please, I am sorry. I was crazy. I didn't mean to pull the trigger. It was a reflex. Please don't let them hurt me. We can work this out." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had enslaved my daughter, the man who had turned my home into a prison. I walked to the hall closet. I opened it. Inside, sitting on the floor where I had placed it hours ago, was a single black plastic trash bag. It was lumpy and half full. I picked it up. I walked back to Preston. I threw the bag at him. It hit his chest with a dull thud. "What is this?" he stammered, clutching the bag with his good hand. "Open it," I said. He fumbled with the knot. His broken wrist made it difficult, but fear made him fast. He tore the plastic open. He dumped the contents onto the floor. A pair of worn-out sneakers, a faded t-shirt with a beer logo, a pair of ripped jeans, and a cheap plastic watch. He stared at the pile of rags. "I don't understand," he whispered. "That is what you were wearing the day you walked into this house 10 years ago," I said. "That is what you owned. That is who you were." I stepped closer, looming over him. "You came here with nothing," I said. "You came here pretending to be a man of potential. And for 10 years you lived on my dime. You wore the suits I paid for. You drove the cars I leased. You ate the food I bought. You lived a life that was a complete fabrication." I kicked the pile of clothes. "And now the show is over," I said. Preston looked at the clothes. He remembered them. He remembered the hungry, desperate boy he used to be. "But I have things here," he cried. "My suits, my shoes, my laptop. Those were bought with stolen money," I said. "They belong to the estate. They belong to me." I pointed to the pile on the floor. "This is yours," I said. "This is your equity. This is your net worth. Put them on." He shook his head. "No. No, I won't. I am Preston Sterling. I am a businessman. You are a trespasser," I roared, "and you are leaving my house the same way you entered it. With nothing." Stone grabbed him. He didn't give him a choice. They stripped the ruined silk jacket off his back. They took the Italian shoes. They left him shivering in his boxers in the middle of the foyer. "Put them on." Preston sobbed as he pulled on the dirty jeans. He struggled into the t-shirt. He jammed his feet into the old sneakers. When he stood up, he wasn't the master of the manor anymore. He was just a street kid who had gotten lucky for a while. He looked at Naomi. She was standing by the stairs watching him. She wasn't crying anymore. She was looking at him like she was looking at a stranger. "Naomi," he pleaded, "help me. Tell him I love you." Naomi looked at me. Then she looked at Preston. "You don't love anyone," she said quietly. "You only love the mirror." She turned her back on him and walked up the stairs. That was the final blow. Preston slumped. The fight went out of him. "Get him out of my house," I said to Stone. They grabbed him by the arms. They didn't walk him. They dragged him. They dragged him across the marble floor he had forced my daughter to scrub. They dragged him through the front door he had forbidden me to enter. I followed them. Outside, the sky had opened up. It was pouring rain. A torrential downpour that turned the driveway into a river. Thunder rumbled overhead, shaking the ground. They dragged him to the front gate, the iron gate with the gold spikes. "Throw him out," I said. Stone and the other guards swung him. 1, 2, 3. They tossed him. Preston landed hard on the wet asphalt outside the gate. He rolled into a puddle of mud. He scrambled to his knees, coughing, spitting water. He looked like a drowned rat. The rain plastered the cheap t-shirt to his skin. He was shivering violently. I stood on the other side of the gate, dry under my umbrella. I looked through the bars. "Don't come back, Preston," I said. "If I see you on this property again, I won't call the police. I will release the dogs. And they haven't been fed today." Preston wiped the mud from his eyes. He looked at the house. He looked at the warmth, the light, the life he had lost. He stood up. He grabbed the bars of the gate. "You can't do this," he screamed, his voice cracking over the sound of the thunder. "This is illegal. I have rights. I have squatters' rights. You have nothing," I shouted back. "I will sue you," he shrieked, shaking the bars. "I will find a lawyer. I will take you for everything. You hear me, old man? You haven't seen the last of me. I will burn this place to the ground." I pressed the button on the remote in my pocket. The heavy iron gates began to close. Preston had to jump back to avoid being crushed. "You will try," I said. The gates slammed shut with a clang that sounded like the door of a vault. I watched him through the bars. He was standing in the rain, screaming at the sky. He was impotent. He was alone. He turned and started walking down the road. He didn't have a car. He didn't have a phone. He didn't have a wallet. He just had the clothes on his back and the rage in his heart. I turned away. I walked back up the driveway. The air was clean. The rain was washing away the stain of his presence. I walked into the house. I closed the door. I locked it. It was over. The parasite was gone. But the damage he left behind, that was still here. I walked to the stairs. I had to find my daughter. I had to tell her it was safe. But as I started to climb, my phone rang. It was Thorne. "Sir," he said, "we have a problem." "What is it?" I asked. "Preston isn't just walking away," Thorne said. "He just made a call from a payphone down the road. Who did he call? I asked. He called a lawyer, Thorne said. But not a defense attorney, he called a shark, a man named Vinny the Vulture Gambini. He specializes in palimony suits and fraud claims. Let him call, I said. I have the evidence. It is not about the evidence, Sir Thorne said. It is about the narrative. He is going to claim you are an imposter. An imposter, I asked. He is going to claim the real Silas King died in Singapore, Thorne said, and that you are a fraud who stole his identity to steal the house. He is going to sue for identity theft. I laughed. That is desperate. It is, Thorne agreed. But it will tie up the assets. It will drag Naomi into court. It will be ugly. Let it be ugly, I said. I hung up. I looked at the front door. He wanted a war. He wanted to fight about who I was. Fine. I would show him exactly who I was. I walked up the stairs. The first battle was won. But the war for my name, that was just beginning. The courtroom was a sterile box of beige walls and fluorescent lights, a stark contrast to the chaotic storm of emotions swirling inside it. Preston stood at the plaintiff's table looking like a man who had tried to glue his shattered life back together with spite. He was wearing a cheap suit he must have bought at a discount store, the sleeves too short, the fabric shiny. His new lawyer, Mr. Slitman, a man with a reputation for taking cases no one else would touch, sat beside him, rifling through papers with nervous energy. I sat at the defense table with Thorne. I wore my bespoke suit calm and composed. Naomi sat behind me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She was still fragile, but there was a new strength in her posture. She was here to witness the end of her nightmare. Your Honor. Slitman began, his voice nasal and irritating. My client, Mr. Sterling, is the victim of a sophisticated fraud. He has been evicted from his marital home, his assets have been seized, and he has been subjected to emotional distress by a man claiming to be his father-in-law. The judge, a stern woman named Justice Halloway, peered over her glasses. Is it your contention, Mr. Slitman, that the defendant is not Silas King? It is, Slitman declared, pointing a finger at me. We have evidence, Your Honor. A death certificate issued in Singapore 10 years ago stating that Silas King died of heart failure. This man is an imposter, a con artist who has assumed the identity of a dead billionaire to steal his estate. Preston stood up, his face flushed. He is a fraud. Your Honor, he shouted, he is the gardener. I hired him 3 weeks ago to trim the hedges. He is playing a game. He brainwashed my wife. He turned her against me. Sit down, Mr. Sterling, the judge ordered. But, Your Honor, Preston continued, ignoring her. He doesn't even look like the photos. Silas King was a powerful man. This guy is just old. He is a nobody. Thorne stood up slowly. Your Honor, if I may. Proceed, the judge said. Thorne walked to the bench. He placed a single document in front of the judge. This is a biometric verification report from the Department of State, Thorne said. It confirms my client's identity through fingerprints, retinal scans, and DNA markers matched against the original records of Silas King. It is dated this morning. The judge looked at the report. She looked at me. She looked at Preston. Mr. Slitman, she said, her voice cold. Did you verify your client's claims before filing this suit? Slitman loosened his tie. Well, Your Honor, we relied on the death certificate provided by Mr. Sterling, a certificate which has been proven to be a forgery. Thorne interjected. A forgery created by Mr. Sterling himself to defraud his wife of her inheritance. Preston's face went pale. That is a lie, he stammered. I found it. It was mailed to me. By whom, the judge asked. By the hospital. Preston lied badly. Your Honor, Thorne said, we have a motion to dismiss this frivolous lawsuit, and we have a counter-motion. We are filing criminal charges against Mr. Sterling for fraud, forgery, and spousal abuse. Abuse, Preston yelled. I never touched her. I loved her. I took care of her when her father abandoned her. I stood up. I turned to look at Naomi. She nodded. She reached into her purse and pulled out the satellite phone I had given her. She walked to the witness stand. Your Honor, she said, her voice trembling but clear, I have evidence. The judge looked at her. Proceed, Ms. King. Naomi plugged the phone into the court's AV system. A video appeared on the large screen mounted on the wall. It was footage from the living room of the estate. The date stamp was 2 weeks ago. On the screen, Preston was screaming at Naomi. He was red-faced, veins bulging in his neck. "You are useless!" he yelled. "You can't even clean a floor right. I should throw you out on the street." He grabbed her arm. He twisted it. Naomi cried out in pain. "Please, Preston," she sobbed on the video. "I am trying. Try harder," he hissed, "or I will lock you in the shed again." The video cut to another clip. Preston was throwing a vase at her. It shattered against the wall inches from her head. "I own you," he screamed. "You are nothing without me. Your father is dead and you are just a maid." The courtroom was dead silent. The only sound was the heavy breathing of the people watching the horror unfold. Preston stared at the screen. He looked like he was watching his own funeral. That is edited," he whispered. "That is out of context." The judge looked at him with pure disgust. "Mr. Sterling," she said, "you are a monster." She banged her gavel. "The lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice," she ruled. "And based on the evidence presented in this courtroom, I am issuing an immediate bench warrant for your arrest." "Arrest!" Preston shrieked. "You can't arrest me. I am the victim here. He stole my house," bailiff the judge ordered. "Take him into custody." Two officers moved toward Preston. He panicked. He tried to run. He scrambled over the railing of the gallery, knocking over chairs. "Stop him!" someone shouted. The officers tackled him. They pinned him to the floor. He screamed like a banshee, kicking and flailing. "You will pay for this," he yelled at me. "You will pay. I have friends. I have connections." "You have nothing," I said, standing over him. "You have a jail cell. And you have a lifetime to think about the mistake you made when you threw a penny at me." They dragged him out. His screams faded down the hallway. The judge looked at me. "Mr. King," she said, "I apologize for the court's time being wasted on this farce. Thank you." "Your Honor," I said. I walked over to Naomi. She was crying, but they were tears of relief. "It is over," she whispered. "He is gone." "It is not over," I said. "Not yet." I looked at the empty doorway where Preston had disappeared. "He is desperate," I said, "and desperate men do desperate things, even in prison. We have to be ready." I took her arm. "Let us go home," I said. We walked out of the courtroom. The sun was shining, but I felt a chill in the air. Preston was in jail. But the game wasn't finished. He had connections, he said. He had the loan shark, and a loan shark who doesn't get paid gets angry. I knew what was coming next, the call. And when it came, I would be the one to answer it. The phone rang in the middle of our quiet dinner, and the sound shattered the peace like a brick through a window. It was a landline I had installed in the safe house, a secure number that only a handful of people knew. But when the caller ID flashed the words Fulton County Correctional Facility, the room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Naomi dropped her fork. The metal clattered against the china, echoing the sudden spike in her heart rate. She looked at the phone as if it were a coiled snake waiting to strike. Her hands, which had been steady all day, started to tremble violently. I reached out to stop her, to let it go to voicemail, but she shook her head. She needed to hear it. She needed to know he was really locked away. She picked up the receiver, and her hand was shaking so hard the cord danced against the wall. I pressed the speaker button so I could hear every word. A robotic voice announced that this was a collect call from an inmate, and when the connection clicked through, the sound of heavy breathing filled the room. It was ragged, wet breathing, the sound of a man who had been crying or bleeding or both. "Naomi," he rasped, and his voice was a ghost of the arrogant baritone I remembered. "Naomi, please help me. You have to accept the charges. Don't hang up. Please, God, don't hang up." Naomi didn't speak. She just held the phone to her ear, her eyes wide and filled with a terrifying mixture of fear and pity. The silence stretched out, agonizing and heavy, until Preston spoke again. "They are killing me in here," he sobbed, his voice cracking into a high-pitched wail of despair. "I have been here for 3 days, and I have been beaten 3 times. They took my shoes. They took my food. I am sleeping on the concrete floor, Naomi. I think my ribs are broken. I am coughing up blood. You have to get me out. You have to call the lawyer and post the bond." I watched my daughter. I saw the conflict in her face. She was a victim, but she was also a human being with a heart too big for her own good. He was playing on that heart. He was using his pain as a weapon to pry open her defenses. "I can't. Preston," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't have any money. You know that. You spent it all. Ask your father, he begged. Ask Silas. He has millions. It is pocket change to him. Tell him I am sorry. Tell him I learned my lesson. Just get me out of this hellhole and I will disappear. I will sign the divorce papers. I will go away forever. I just don't want to die in here. He is not going to help you. Naomi said, her voice gaining a tiny bit of strength. And I can't help you either. You did this to yourself. The tone on the other end of the line changed instantly. The pathetic begging vanished, replaced by a cold, serpentine hiss that made the hair on my arms stand up. It was the voice of the abuser, the manipulator, the monster she had married. You ungrateful bitch, he spat. After everything I did for you, I made you a lady. I gave you a home, and now you are going to leave me to rot. You stole my home, she said, tears leaking from her eyes. You made me a servant. Listen to me very carefully, Naomi, he said, his voice dropping lower, deadly serious. If you don't get me out of here by tomorrow morning, I am going to destroy you. You can't hurt me anymore, she said, though her hand was gripping the table edge so hard her knuckles were white. You are in a cage. I don't need to be there to hurt you. He laughed a dry, humorless sound. Do you remember our honeymoon in Cabo? Do you remember the private photos I took? The videos? Naomi froze. Her face drained of all color, leaving her looking like a wax statue. She stopped breathing. I kept them, Preston said. I have copies. They are on a cloud server scheduled to auto-release if I don't enter a code every 24 hours. If I'm stuck in here, I can't enter the code, Naomi. And if that code isn't entered, every single one of your friends, every business associate of your father, and every tabloid in the country gets a link. No, she gasped. You wouldn't. Try me, he challenged. You think you are humiliated now. Wait until the world sees you the way I see you. You will never be able to show your face in public again. Your father's reputation will be in the gutter. I will burn it all down, Naomi. He was bluffing. Or maybe he wasn't. It didn't matter. The threat alone was a violation. It was a psychic assault designed to strip her of the dignity she was just starting to rebuild. I saw her crumbling. I saw the old Naomi, the beaten-down maid, starting to resurface. She was about to cave. She was about to beg him not to do it. That was enough. I reached over and took the phone from her hand. She looked at me terrified, but she let go. I held the receiver to my ear. I didn't say anything at first. I just listened to him breathing, waiting for her to break. Is that you, Naomi? He asked, impatient. Are you there? Did you hear me? I want $500,000 bail or you are going to be the star of the internet. Hello, Preston, I said. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Silas, he whispered. You seem to be under a misapprehension. I said, my voice calm, deep and cold as the bottom of the ocean. You think you have leverage. You think you are holding a royal flush, but you are holding a pair of twos, and you are betting against the house. I am not bluffing, Silas, he shouted, trying to regain control. I have the pictures. I will ruin her. I will ruin you. Go ahead, I said. What he asked, stunned. Upload them, I said. Send them to the press. Send them to the Pope for all I care. Because the moment you do, the moment one single pixel of my daughter's private life touches the internet, I am going to release a file of my own. What file? He stammered. You don't have anything on me. I have everything on you, Preston, I said. Did you really think I just bought the bank to foreclose on the house? I bought the bank to see the records. The deep records. I paused, letting the silence weigh on him. I know about the loan you took out 3 years ago, I said. Not the mortgage. The other one. The one from the investment fund in Little Odessa. The one backed by the Russian syndicate. Preston went silent. I could hear his heart beating through the phone line. I traced the wire transfers, I continued. You borrowed $2 million from the Bratva to cover your bad stock trades. You told them you were investing it. You told them you were going to double it. But you didn't invest it, did you, Preston? You spent it. You bought cars. You bought watches. You bought the illusion of a successful life. How do you know that? He whispered. I know because I bought the debt. I lied. I didn't actually buy it, but I knew enough to make him believe I held his life in my hands. I know that you skimmed off the top. You embezzled from the Russian mob, Preston. Do you know what they do to people who steal from them? No, he moaned. No, please. They don't sue you, I said. They don't post mean comments on social media. They erase you. I leaned closer to the phone as if I could transmit the threat physically through the wire. If you release those photos, I said, I will personally send your location and your cell number to Yuri Volkov. I will tell him exactly where his money went. I will tell him you are sitting in a county jail unprotected and vulnerable. Don't, he cried. They will kill me. They will cut me into pieces. Then you better make sure those photos never see the light of day, I said. You better make sure your cloud server has a permanent malfunction, because the only thing keeping you alive right now is my silence. And my silence is very expensive. Naomi watched me, her eyes wide. She had never heard me like this. She had never seen the ruthless businessman who had survived in the shark tanks of global finance. She was seeing the father who would burn the world to keep her safe. Please, Silas. Preston begged. He was sobbing now, broken completely. I won't do it. I swear. I will delete them. Just don't tell the Russians. I want to live. You are not living, Preston, I said. You are surviving. And right now your survival depends on your ability to keep your mouth shut and your head down. I looked at the phone. I was done with him. Enjoy your stay, I said. Wait, he screamed. Wait, Silas, there is someone coming. I heard a noise in the background on his end. Heavy footsteps echoing on concrete, the sound of other inmates falling silent. The atmosphere in this jail had shifted. Oh God, Preston whispered. Oh God, no. What is it? I asked, my voice devoid of sympathy. It is the butcher, he whimpered. The guy who runs the block. He is coming to my cell. He is looking at me. I checked my watch. My contacts inside the prison had timed it perfectly. I had paid for a protection detail not to protect Preston, but to ensure he got the welcome he deserved. The butcher wasn't there to kill him. He was there to collect the rent for the space Preston was occupying. Help me! Preston screamed. He has a shank! He has a knife! Silas, help me! I looked at Naomi. She was trembling, but she was safe. She was free. You are on your own, son, I said. I hung up the phone. Through the disconnect click, I heard the beginning of a scream. It was a high, terrified sound that was cut off abruptly as the connection died. I placed the receiver back on the cradle. The room was silent again. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Naomi stared at the phone. Is he dead? She asked. No, I said. He is not dead. He is just learning. Learning what she asked. He is learning what it feels like to be powerless, I said. He is learning what it feels like to be the maid in someone else's house. I walked over to her and put my hand on her shoulder. The photos are gone, I said. He won't release them. He is too busy trying to stay alive. Naomi slumped in her chair, the tension draining out of her body. She buried her face in her hands and wept. But these weren't tears of fear. They were tears of release. The sword that had been hanging over her head had been removed. I went to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hand was steady. I had played a dangerous game. I had invoked monsters to fight a monster. But it was necessary. Preston thought he could rule through fear. He thought he could terrorize my daughter from a jail cell. He needed to understand that there are bigger predators in the water. And he was just a minnow. I brought the water to Naomi. Drink, I said. It is over. She took the glass. She looked up at me with awe. You knew about the Russians, she asked. I make it my business to know everything about the people who hurt my family, I said. She took a sip. He is going to be in so much pain, she whispered. Yes, I said. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel joy. I felt balance. The scales were tipping back. Tomorrow the Russian mob would receive an anonymous tip about a certain inmate's location anyway, just to keep him honest, just to keep him looking over his shoulder for the rest of his miserable sentence. But tonight we would eat dinner, we would sleep, and we would not be afraid. I sat down at the table and picked up my fork. Eat your vegetables, Naomi, I said. She smiled weakly. A small, fragile thing, but it was there. Yes, Dad, she said. We ate in silence, the ghost of Preston Sterling fading with every bite. He was in his hell now, and we were finally in our home. The stale air of the visitation room at Fulton County Jail was replaced by the sharper metallic tang of the general population block. Preston wasn't in protective custody anymore. His lawyer had quit, his money was frozen, and his influence had evaporated. He was just another inmate in an orange jumpsuit, and a very unpopular one at that. He sat in his cell staring at the graffiti scratched into the paint. It had been a week since the trial, a week of terror. He hadn't slept more than an hour at a time. Every shadow looked like a knife. Every whisper sounded like a threat. The cell door buzzed and slid open. It wasn't mealtime. It wasn't recreation time. Two large men walked in. They weren't guards. They were inmates, but they moved with the authority of ownership. One was bald with a spiderweb tattoo on his neck. The other was younger, wiry, with dead eyes. "Preston Sterling," the bald man said. It wasn't a question. Preston scrambled back onto his bunk. "I don't have any money," he whimpered. "I swear, my accounts are frozen." "We know," the man said. "We aren't here for your commissary account." He stepped closer. "We have a message from Mr. Volkov." Preston's blood ran cold. Volkov, the Russian mob boss he had borrowed $2 million from 3 years ago. The debt he thought he could pay off with the house money. I can explain," Preston stammered. "The deal fell through. My father-in-law, he tricked me." "Mr. Volkov doesn't care about tricks," the wiry man said, pulling a sharpened toothbrush from his sleeve. "He cares about his principal and his interest." He pressed the shiv against Preston's neck. "You owe us $2.5 million, the bald man said. "Where is it?" "I don't have it," Preston screamed, tears streaming down his face. "I have nothing. Look at me." "Then you are useless," the man said. He nodded to his partner. "Wait," Preston shrieked. "Wait! I can get it. I have a source." The wiry man paused, the plastic blade digging into Preston's skin. "What source?" the bald man asked. "My father-in-law," Preston gasped. "Silas King. He's a billionaire. He owns King Logistics. He has hundreds of millions in liquid cash." "We know who he is," the man said. "He's the one who put you here. Why would he pay your debt?" "Because of his daughter," Preston said, his eyes wide with a desperate, evil idea. "Naomi. He loves her. He came back from the dead for her. He would do anything to save her." The bald man frowned. "She's your wife." "Ex-wife," Preston spat. "She betrayed me too, but she's his weakness. If you take her, he will pay. He will pay anything." The men looked at each other. Kidnapping a billionaire's daughter was high risk, but $2.5 million was a lot of money, and Volkov didn't like to lose. "Where is she?" the bald man asked. "She works at a flower shop," Preston said, the words spilling out of him like vomit. "Betty's Blooms, in Midtown. She leaves at 6 every day. She takes the bus. She's alone." The bald man smiled. It was a terrifying sight. "Good," he said. "If this works, maybe you live. If it doesn't—" He made a cutting motion across his throat. They left the cell. Preston collapsed on the bunk, shaking. He had just sold his ex-wife to the mob to save his own skin. He knew what they would do to her. He knew what they might do to her even if they got the money. But he didn't care. He was alive. For now. That evening, the rain was falling again in Atlanta. It seemed like it had been raining for months. I sat in my study reviewing the security reports for the new warehouse complex. Sterling stood by the window watching the storm. "Quiet night, sir," Sterling said. "Too quiet," I murmured. I had a bad feeling. A prickling on the back of my neck that I hadn't felt since my days in the desert. My phone buzzed. It wasn't a call. It was a video message from an unknown number. I opened it. The video was shaky shot in the back of a moving van. It was dark, but the light from a street lamp flashed through the window, illuminating a face. It was Naomi. She was bound and gagged. Her eyes were wide with terror. There was a bruise on her cheek. A man's hand was holding her hair, pulling her head back. "Hello, Mr. King," a voice said from behind the camera. It was heavily accented, Russian. "We have something that belongs to you." The camera panned to a newspaper held up next to her face. Today's date. "Your son-in-law says you have deep pockets," the voice said. "We have a debt to collect, $5 million, cash, non-consecutive bills." Naomi tried to scream through the gag. The sound was muffled, a desperate plea for help. "You have 2 hours," the voice said. "We will send coordinates if you call the police. Well, flowers wilt very quickly without water." The video ended. I stared at the black screen. My hand crushed the phone. The glass cracked. "Sir," Sterling asked, turning around. "What is it?" I stood up. The chair fell over behind me. "They took her," I whispered. "They took Naomi." Sterling's face went hard. "Who?" "The Russians," I said. "Preston sold her out. He told them to take her." I walked to the wall safe. I punched in the code. The door swung open. I didn't reach for checkbooks. I didn't reach for deeds. I reached for the bottom shelf. I pulled out a heavy black case. I opened it. Inside were 2 custom 1911 pistols, a satellite phone, and a stack of gold coins, tools from a past I thought I had buried. "Call the team," I said, my voice cold as the grave. "Not the lawyers, the other team." Sterling nodded. He knew who I meant. The men I had worked with in Dubai, the men who didn't ask questions, the men who solved problems that the law couldn't touch. "What are the rules of engagement, sir?" Sterling asked, pulling out his own weapon. I picked up a gun. I checked the chamber. It was loaded. "There are no rules," I said. I walked to the window. I looked out at the rain-slicked city. Somewhere out there, my daughter was terrified. Somewhere out there, men were hurting her because they thought I was just a rich old man. They were about to find out that I wasn't just a builder. I was a demolition expert. "Let's go," I said. We walked out of the penthouse. We didn't take the elevator. We took the stairs to the roof where the helicopter was waiting. The war had come to my doorstep, and I was going to burn it down. The private hangar at DeKalb Peachtree Airport was quiet except for the thumping of the helicopter rotors. The team was assembled. 5 men. They were not police officers. They were not FBI agents. They were ghosts. Men I had worked with in Kandahar and Dubai when business required more than just a handshake. They wore tactical gear with no insignia. They carried weapons that were illegal in 50 states. Stone was checking his magazine. He looked at me. "Are you sure about this, Mr. King?" he asked. "This is domestic soil. The rules are different." "There are no rules tonight, Stone," I said, adjusting the ballistic vest under my coat. They took my daughter. I picked up my own weapon. It was a Sig Sauer Peter 26, heavy and familiar in my hand. I hadn't held one in 20 years, but the muscle memory was still there. "We have the location," Stone said. "An abandoned shipping container yard near the rail lines. Thermal imaging shows 6 heat signatures in the main office. 1 is stationary. That is the hostage." "Let's go," I said. We boarded the helicopter. The city lights fell away as we rose into the darkness. I looked down at Atlanta. Somewhere down there, my daughter was tied up, terrified, waiting for a father she thought was dead to save her. I wasn't dead. But tonight I was going to bring death. The helicopter flew low, running dark. We landed in a clearing a mile from the target. We moved on foot through the overgrown brush. The night was silent. We reached the perimeter fence. Stone cut the wire. We slipped through. The shipping yard was a maze of rusted metal containers stacked 3 high. It was a graveyard of commerce. We moved through the shadows, silent as smoke. I saw the office, a small, corrugated metal building in the center of the yard. Light spilled from the windows. I could hear voices, laughter. They were celebrating. They thought they had won. They thought they were going to get $5 million. They were going to get lead. We stacked up at the door. Stone looked at me. I nodded. Breach. Stone kicked the door. It flew open with a crash. Flashbangs went in first. Bang, bang. Bright white light blinded the room. We moved in. I saw them. 5 men. Russians. They were scrambling for weapons. "Drop it!" Stone yelled, firing a warning shot into the ceiling. 1 man raised a shotgun. Stone put 2 rounds in his chest before he could pull the trigger. He went down. The others froze. They saw the laser sights dancing on their chests. They saw the professional gear. They knew they were outmatched. I walked through the smoke. I saw her. Naomi was tied to a chair in the corner. Her face was bruised. Her lip was cut. She looked at me with wild, terrified eyes. "Dad," she screamed. A man grabbed her. He was big, bald, with a scar running down his face. The leader. He put a knife to her throat. "Back off," he shouted. "Back off or I cut her." The team froze. Weapons raised. "Stand off." I stepped forward. I lowered my gun. "Let her go," I said. My voice was calm. Too calm. "Who are you?" the Russian asked. "I am the man you tried to extort," I said. "You are the billionaire," he sneered. "You brought the money." "I brought the payment," I said. I took a step closer. "You made a mistake," I said. "You listened to Preston. You thought I was just a bank account. You thought I was soft." I took another step. "You touched my money," I said. "I didn't care. Money is paper." I looked at the knife pressed against my daughter's skin. A thin line of blood appeared. But you touched my daughter, I said, and for that I will burn your world to ash. The Russian laughed. You are an old man. What are you going to do? I am going to kill you, I said. I moved. I wasn't fast. I was 74. But I was close enough. I lunged. I grabbed the hand holding the knife. I twisted. I heard the wrist snap. The Russian screamed. He dropped the knife. He punched me. A heavy blow to the ribs. I felt something crack. The wind left my lungs. I stumbled back. He came at me. He was younger, stronger. He grabbed my throat. He squeezed. Die, old man, he hissed. I couldn't breathe. My vision swam. I saw Naomi screaming, but I couldn't hear her. I reached into my coat. I pulled out the second gun, the backup. I pressed it against his stomach. I pulled the trigger. Bang! The Russian froze. His grip loosened. He looked down at his stomach. He looked at me. You... He gasped. I pushed him away. He fell to the floor. I stood there gasping for air, clutching my ribs. Secure the room. I wheezed. Stone and the team moved in. They zip-tied the remaining Russians. I walked over to Naomi. I cut the ropes. She fell into my arms. She was shaking. Dad, she sobbed. You shot him. I held her tight. I didn't look at the body on the floor. I told you, I said. I protect my own. Are you hurt? She asked, pulling back, looking at my face. You are bleeding. I touched my lip. Blood. I am fine, I said. But I wasn't fine. My side was on fire. Every breath was a knife. Mr. Kingstone said, we need to move. The police will be here soon. I nodded. Let's go. We walked out of the office. The night air was cool. I leaned on Naomi. She held me up. We walked through the maze of containers. Dad, she said, you saved me. You saved yourself, I said. You held on. We reached the helicopter. I climbed in. The pain was getting worse. Stone looked at me. You need a hospital, sir. Home, I said. Take me home. The helicopter lifted off. I looked down at the shipping yard. It was dark again. The threat was gone, but the cost was high. I closed my eyes. The darkness took me. The Russian gangster was on top of me, his hands crushing my windpipe. Black spots danced in my vision. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. My ribs were screaming in agony. I reached for my backup gun, but my arms felt like lead. I was 74 years old. I was a fighter, but even fighters get old. I looked into the man's eyes. They were cold, dead eyes. He was going to kill me. He was going to snap my neck right here in this shipping container graveyard. And then I heard it. A scream, not a scream of terror, a scream of rage. Get off him. The Russian turned his head. Naomi was standing there. She wasn't the cowering victim anymore. She wasn't the maid. She was standing tall, her feet planted wide, her shoulders squared. She was holding my Sig Sauer P226 in both hands. Her grip was shaky, but her aim was true. She pointed it right at the Russian's chest. Get off my father, she yelled. The Russian laughed, a wet, guttural sound. Put it down, little girl, he sneered. You don't have the guts. He tightened his grip on my throat. I gasped, clawing at his hands. I said, get off him, Naomi screamed. She didn't hesitate. She didn't flinch. She pulled the trigger. Bang! The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The recoil jerked her arms back, but she didn't drop the gun. The bullet hit the Russian in the shoulder. He screamed, spinning away from me, clutching his arm. Blood sprayed across the concrete floor. He fell to his knees, his face twisted in shock and pain. Naomi didn't stop. She racked the slide just like I had taught her when she was a teenager at the shooting range, a memory I thought she had forgotten. She pointed the gun at the other Russians who were starting to move toward us. Stay back, she shouted. Stay back or I will kill every single one of you. They froze. They looked at their leader bleeding on the floor. They looked at the woman with the wild eyes and the steady gun. They saw something in her they hadn't seen before. They saw the king blood. I rolled onto my side, coughing, gasping for air. I looked at my daughter. She was magnificent. She was terrifying. She was everything I had ever hoped she would be. Dad, she said, her voice calm now, dangerously calm. Are you okay? I am fine, I wheezed. Get up, she said. I pushed myself up. My ribs burned like fire, but I stood. I walked over to her. I put my hand on her shoulder. You did good, Sparrow, I whispered. She looked at me. Her eyes were clear. The fear was gone. The years of abuse, the years of being told she was nothing, they had all burned away in that single moment of action. "He was going to kill you," she said. "He tried," I said. The sound of sirens cut through the night air. Blue and red lights flashed against the rusted metal of the shipping containers. The police were here. Finally. The Russians looked at each other. They knew it was over. They dropped their weapons. They put their hands up. Stone and his team moved in, securing the prisoners. Stone looked at Naomi. He looked at the gun in her hand. He nodded. "Nice shot," Miss Stone said. Naomi lowered the gun. She engaged the safety. She handed it to Stone Butt first. "Thank you," she said. I put my arm around her. She leaned into me, but she didn't collapse. She stood strong. She was supporting me as much as I was supporting her. We walked out of the office into the cool night air. The rain had stopped. The sky was clearing. The police swarmed the yard. Paramedics rushed toward us. "Mr. King," a medic said, "let us look at those ribs." "I am fine," I said, waving him off. "Check my daughter." "I am fine, Dad," Naomi said. "I don't need a doctor. I need a drink. And a shower." I laughed. It hurt, but I laughed. "We can do that," I said. I looked at her. I really looked at her. The bruises on her face were still there. Her clothes were torn. She looked like she had been through a war, but she also looked like a queen. "You saved my life," I said. "You saved mine first," she said. She looked back at the warehouse where the police were dragging the Russians out in handcuffs. "I used to be so scared," she whispered, "of Preston, of the world, of being alone. And now I asked." "Now," she said, looking at me with a fierce smile, "now I know who I am." "Who are you?" I asked. "I am Naomi King," she said, "and nobody touches my family." I pulled her close. I kissed the top of her head. "That is right," I said. "That is exactly right." We walked toward the ambulance. The paramedics insisted on checking us out. I let them. I sat on the bumper of the ambulance while they taped up my ribs. Naomi sat next to me holding an ice pack to her cheek. We watched as the police processed the scene. We watched as the threats were neutralized one by one. It was over. The danger was gone. But something new had begun. I saw it in the way she held herself. I saw it in the way she looked at the officers answering their questions with confidence. She wasn't the little girl I had left behind 20 years ago. She wasn't the victim Preston had created. She was a warrior. And she was ready. Ready for what I asked myself. Ready to lead. I looked at the city skyline in the distance. The lights of my buildings were shining bright. My empire. I had built it for her. But I had always worried she wouldn't be strong enough to hold it. I had worried that the weight of it would crush her. I wasn't worried anymore. She had faced death. She had faced evil. And she had pulled the trigger. She was ready. "Come on, Sparrow," I said, standing up. "Let us go home." She stood up. She took my hand. "Yes, Dad," she said. "Let us go home." We walked toward the car. The night was quiet now. The sirens had faded. The war was over. And we had won. The state penitentiary was a concrete box filled with the echoes of men who had nothing left to lose. Preston Sterling sat in a wheelchair in the corner of the visitation room. He was not the man who had thrown a penny at me on the driveway. He was a ruin. His legs were covered by a thin blanket, useless now after the accident in the shower block 3 weeks ago. The Russian mob had a long reach, and they didn't appreciate snitches. They had crushed his spine, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. His face was a map of scars. His nose had been broken and set crookedly. One of his ears was missing a piece. He looked like a man who had been chewed up and spat out by the devil himself. Naomi walked into the room. She was wearing a simple black dress, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked strong. She looked like a woman who had walked through fire and come out the other side forged in steel. She didn't look at the guards. She didn't look at the other inmates. She looked only at Preston. She sat down opposite him. There was no glass partition this time, just a metal table bolted to the floor. Preston looked up. His eyes filled with tears. "Naomi," he croaked. His voice was a whisper damaged by the same beating that took his legs. "You came." "I got your letter," Naomi said, her voice devoid of emotion. She placed a crumpled piece of paper on the table. It was written in shaky handwriting, begging for forgiveness, begging for a second chance, begging for mercy. "I meant every word," Preston sobbed, reaching out a trembling hand. "I am so sorry, Naomi. For everything. For the house. For the money. For the warehouse." Naomi looked at his hand. She didn't take it. She looked at it like it was a dead spider. "You're sorry because you're in a wheelchair," she said coldly. "You're sorry because you lost. If you had won, if you had gotten the money, I would still be dead in that shipping container." "No," Preston cried. "No, I would have paid them. I would have saved you." "Liar," Naomi said. "You sold me. You traded my life for your debt. You told them where I worked. You told them what time I left. You put a price tag on my head, Preston. $5 million. That's what I was worth to you." She reached into her purse. She pulled out a small velvet box. Preston's eyes widened. "Is that—" She opened it. Inside was her wedding ring, a 3-carat diamond that Preston had bought with stolen money, a symbol of a marriage built on lies. "I found this in the evidence locker," she said. "The police gave it back to me." "Naomi, please," Preston begged. "Keep it, sell it, use the money. I want you to have it." Naomi laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. "Sell it. It's fake, Preston, just like you." She took the ring out of the box. She held it up to the fluorescent light. It sparkled with a cheap, artificial brilliance. "My father had it appraised," she said. "It's cubic zirconia. You didn't even buy me a real diamond." Preston slumped in his wheelchair, the last shred of his dignity stripped away. I didn't have the money," he whispered. "You never had anything," Naomi said. "You were empty, and you tried to fill yourself up by draining everyone around you." She stood up. She towered over him. "I didn't come here to forgive you," she said. "I came here to return something." She threw the ring. It hit him in the chest, bouncing off his prison jumpsuit and clattering onto the floor. "I don't want your name," she said. "I don't want your ring. I don't want your apologies." "Naomi, please," he wailed, trying to wheel himself closer to her, but the chair was locked. "Who will take care of me? I'm crippled. I'm alone. I have nobody." "You have your memories," Naomi said. "You have the memory of the man you could have been. You have the memory of the wife who loved you and the father-in-law who tried to help you." She leaned down, her face inches from his. "The woman you married died in that warehouse, Preston," she hissed. "She died when she realized her husband had sold her to killers. The woman standing in front of you, this is Naomi King, and she doesn't know you." She turned and walked away. "Naomi!" Preston screamed. "Don't leave me. I'm scared. They're going to kill me." She didn't stop. She didn't look back. She walked out of the visitation room, leaving him screaming in his wheelchair, a broken man in a concrete box. I was waiting for her in the hallway. I saw the look on her face. It wasn't sadness. It was peace. "Is it done?" I asked. "It's done," she said. She took my arm. "Let's go home, Dad," she said. We walked out of the prison together. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Preston Sterling was a memory, a bad dream. Naomi King was awake, and she was ready to live. The sun was setting over the estate at 4000 West Paces Ferry Road, painting the sky in hues of lavender and gold. It was the kind of evening that made you believe in second chances. I stood on the balcony of the master suite, the same balcony where Preston used to smoke his cigars and dream of spending my money. Now the air was clean. The cigars were gone. The rot had been scrubbed away. Naomi stood beside me. She wasn't wearing a maid's uniform. She was wearing a tailored business suit, navy blue, sharp and professional. Her hair was cut in a chic bob, and her skin glowed with the health that comes from freedom. She held a tablet in her hand, reviewing the quarterly reports for King Global Construction. "The Singapore project is ahead of schedule," she said, tapping the screen. "And the Dubai team just secured the permits for the new waterfront development. We're up 20% this quarter, Dad." I smiled. "Good work, CEO." She looked at me, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. "Are you sure you don't want to come back? I mean, really come back? The board misses you." "The board misses my shouting." I chuckled. "You're doing fine without it. Besides, I have a new project." "Oh," she asked. "Another skyscraper?" "No," I said, looking out at the garden below. The roses were blooming vibrant and red. The fountain was bubbling clear water. The hedges were trimmed to perfection. "I'm thinking of expanding the garden. Maybe put in a koi pond. Something peaceful." Naomi laughed. It was a sound I hadn't heard in 20 years before I left before the darkness fell. It was the sound of my little girl. "You're really retiring this time," she said. "I am," I said. "I spent my life building towers to touch the sky. Now I just want to feel the ground under my feet." I looked at her. I looked at the strength in her jaw, the fire in her eyes. She wasn't the broken woman I had found scrubbing the driveway. She was a titan. "You saved me, Dad," she whispered, her voice catching. "You came back from the dead and you saved me." "I didn't save you," I said, putting my arm around her. "I just reminded you who you were. You saved yourself the moment you picked up that gun." She shivered slightly at the memory. "I was so scared." "Courage isn't the absence of fear," I said. "It's acting in spite of it. You were brave, Naomi, braver than I ever was." She leaned her head on my shoulder. We stood there in silence, watching the twilight settle over the estate. The house was quiet, no screaming, no threats, no lies, just the hum of the cicadas and the distant murmur of the city. It had been a long road, a road paved with betrayal and pain, but we had walked it. We had walked it together. Preston was gone. The Russian mob was gone. The debts were paid. But the scars remained. I looked at my hands. They were old hands, spotted with age and scarred from work. They had built cities. They had held weapons. They had held my daughter when she cried. They were tired hands. "Dad," Naomi said softly, "do you ever think about him?" "Who?" "Preston." I looked at the spot on the driveway where I had thrown him out. The rain had washed away the mud, but the memory lingered. "I think about him," I admitted. "I think about the waste. He had potential. He had charm. He had intelligence. But he had no soul." "He wanted to be you," she said. "He wanted your power." "He didn't understand power," I said. "He thought power was about taking. Real power is about giving. It's about protecting. It's about standing in front of the ones you love and saying, 'Not one step further.'" Naomi nodded. "I went to see him," she said quietly. "Last week." I stiffened. "Why?" "I needed to close the book," she said. "I needed to see him one last time without fear." "And he's diminished," she said. "He sits in that wheelchair and he talks about the past. He talks about the deals he almost made, the money he almost had. He's stuck, Dad. He's stuck in a loop of his own greed." "He's where he belongs," I said. "I told him I forgave him," she said. I looked at her surprised. "You did?" "Not for him," she said. "For me. I can't carry that hate around anymore. It's too heavy. I have a company to run. I have a life to live." I smiled. She was wiser than me. I still carried the hate. I still carried the rage. But maybe with time I could lay it down too. "You're a good woman, Naomi," I said. "Better than he deserved." "I'm a king," she said, lifting her chin. "Yes," I said. "You are." The sun dipped below the horizon. The first stars appeared. I took a deep breath of the cool night air. "Dinner?" I asked. "I'm cooking," she said. "You cook?" I teased. "I thought you only ordered room service." She punched my arm lightly. "Hey, I learned a few things in the last 20 years. My lasagna is legendary." "I'll be the judge of that," I said. We walked back into the house. The lights were warm and inviting. It wasn't a museum anymore. It wasn't a prison. It was a home. I paused at the door of the living room. I looked at the spot where I had confronted Preston, the spot where the gun had clicked. The ghost of that night was fading. The memory was losing its teeth. I walked into the kitchen. Naomi was already pulling ingredients from the fridge. She was humming a tune. I sat at the island and watched her. I had traveled the world. I had seen wonders. But nothing was as beautiful as this. My daughter. Safe. Happy. Free. I had come home to a war. But I had found peace. And as I watched her cook, I knew that my work was finally truly done. For 20 years I built skylines across the world, but I forgot to fortify the walls of my own home. I thought sending money was enough, but money without presence is just an open vault for thieves. My son-in-law mistook my absence for death, and my daughter's kindness for weakness. He turned a princess into a maid thinking he was the king. But kings aren't made by stealing crowns, they are made by defending them. I had to become a gardener in my own garden to weed out the snakes. Never underestimate the patience of a father, for he will burn the world down to keep his child warm. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments if you think Preston got what he deserved. Until next time, protect your kingdom and cherish your family.